Okay, so welcome everyone to our Literacy Director meeting. Today we're going to go over a lot of information regarding legislative session, but we do have a few things prior to that that we wanted to take care of and share information with you about. One thing I wanted to share before we get started is
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. If you could mute as you're coming in, that would be great. Um, Courtney, I know that you are a co-host. If you could switch it so that when people enter the meeting, they are muted, that would be excellent. Thank you. Before we get started, I do want to share that we know and understand that there are webinars being hosted by outside entities. We do want you to know that they are not representatives of USBE, the superintendency, or the superintendent, or any board members. So we just want to make you aware that we are aware that those are happening, but that they do not represent USBE or the board. So as we go throughout the day today, please keep that in mind. And but we are happy that you are here with us today to learn about this. And again, we are grateful for you being flexible with your schedule and shifting from that March meeting to our April meeting. So we are going to go ahead and do a quick little icebreaker as we are still letting people into the meeting. And so grab something nearby. You might have to get up and move, but grab something nearby or change your background on your Zoom or to match your mood or your April vibe. So um, I am going to grab this little guy right here. It's one of these cute little, I don't know, knitted, I call them my stress balls, but it has like a little smiling face on it because it feels like forever since we've been together. And I am happy to see all of my literacy friends and be in the same room. So let's see what you have to share. So everybody grab something nearby to share your mood or change your background to share your mood for April. Let's see what we get. Oh, Angie grabbed something. It looks like a postcard with a beach on it. Angie, share more. Are you going to?
I'm just always dreaming of this. Always dreaming of the beach. Yeah.
Awesome. Dallas has got something. I can't see it because of her background. Oh, it looks like it's an energy drink, a Monster energy drink.
Yep,
Go
I'm hoping
Dallas.
April is full, well, the end of April is full of energy.
And Adrian, I see, what have you got? Come off mute. And then Susan Goldsberry will go after Adrian.
I've got Gumby. Gumby always sits here on my computer monitor. He has my whole career to remind me to be flexible, and right now, with all the legislative changes, he's especially important.
Okay, we'll go to Susan Goldsberry and then Jesse, you're next.
So we have myself and Angeli. Angeli has a Zen frog,
Because we need that right now.
and I have
Uh-huh.
sugar for candy. And to the
Love
point of
both of
just
them.
bring the candy jar over and I'll just start eating.
Done. Jesse, go ahead.
I have a crab, and it's not indicative of my mood. It is because I just booked my flights to the beach. It reminds me of the
Yay.
beach.
Yay. So Jesse's not crabby. She's going to the beach.
I'm not.
Yes. Love it. And Carrie, yours is blurred, so I can't tell what it is, but it looks like a bottle of water.
Yeah, my black background is blurred. Actually, I just picked this. It says, Welcome home, Elder Ryan Milner, Italy, Rome mission. So I know you've been asking, Julie. He is home, and I just got back from Italy picking him up. So
Love it.
my mood is pretty good right now, but
That is awesome. So, yes, I'm grateful that I'm so glad to hear you went over and got him, and he is home and safe.
yes.
I have 91 days until my missionary comes home from Mexico, and then my youngest son, just got his mission call, and he starts September 9th, and he is going to Colombia. And I was like, somebody is trying my patience because I said safe and not third world, and you did not follow those directions. So I am dealing with that, but he is super excited. And yesterday, I should have grabbed this, but yesterday, the official flag came in, so we have the flag here for pictures. So yes, but thank you for taking a few minutes to share how you're feeling. We are, again, so very grateful that you are all here with us today. So we'll quickly go over our agenda and then we'll dive right in. So we are going to turn the time over next to Ed Connective to share their little bit. And we have Kulsum here that is going to share. And then we will go over some assessment updates with Dallas. We have Katrina here from our preschool team to share some information about Science of Reading posters. Then we'll turn it over to Denise and Harmony for oral language. Then we'll take a quick break, and then the rest of the time will be in legislative session and some additional updates. So I am going to turn the time over to Kulsum. And Kulsum, do you want to share your screen?
I can share it, or I have the slides, I believe, in your deck if you want to do it, and I can tell you when to leave through. Which would you prefer?
Oh, do I have the? Oh, they are in there. Okay. I was like, I was in there earlier and I didn't see it, but you must have
This is
snuck
very
them in there
last-minute
without me seeing.
addition. Thanks, Julie.
That's perfect. Okay, great. We'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on and to visit. I'm Kulsum. I'm the Senior Director of State and Strategic Partnerships at EdConnective. We have had the honor of working with so many of you and your literacy teams and implementation teams over the last few years, and are really excited to share some of the progress we've seen and how we can continue to be helpful as we're navigating some of the transition in legislation. And so I'll start by sharing some data. We recently actually did a poll of some of our summative data you can see here. And we're really excited to see the impact on students of our work. So what we noticed is the more we worked or engaged with a district, so this was measured by the number of times we were meeting with you all as literacy directors, coaches, principals, anyone in the state, anyone in the district, the more improvement we saw in the number of students that were actually on reading on grade level. And so you can see that some of our highest engagers got over 10% improvement in reading on grade level and the number of students that were proficient. And so it was really great to be able to see, the impact directly on students of our work, and really rewarding to see how we can continue to help impact. And so, as I'm sure Julie will talk about more in the rest of the session, some of the pre-funded connections and really partnerships with each of your LEAs that were funded through SB 127 will no longer be available going into the next school year. However, we've worked with and talked with Julie a lot about how we can continue to be helpful, and some of the, the pass-through funds and the funds that you all will have available to you can still continue to be used for EdConnective support if you all would like to see that happen. And so thought it would be helpful to spend some time talking not just about how we have already worked with some of your districts, but some ways in which we can actually expand or continue that support. I'd love to show you some ways in which we've worked with other districts and states and organizations in the past to kind of get your wheels turning. And so if you want to hop to the next slide, Julie. One area we've done a lot of work is paraprofessional support. And so just recently, we've been working with the highest enrollment charter network in the state of California that has a huge incentive to get more paraprofessionals into their classrooms in order to support the high number of English language learners they have. What we've done with their paraprofessionals is worked with them on tier 2 supports, ELL-based interventions, how they're really creating a partnership with the teachers they're working with, and even just building kind of some basic pedagogy knowledge for that group. So that's one, work that we've done in another arena that may be helpful to you all, as well as I know you're navigating, thinking through how paraprofessionals can impact literacy outcomes for students. A second one, and if you want to go to the next slide, Julie. We've been working for the past several years with all of the principals and coaches in Round Rock Independent School District in Texas. We have worked on first just creating kind of like walkthrough observation tools that all instructional leaders could use, and then directly like coaching principals and some teachers as well throughout the district. And you can see here just in the first couple years that we worked with kindergarten through second grade, all of them saw really huge average jumps and number of students proficient, specifically kindergarten going from 61% to 81%. And so again, really always rewarding to see the direct impact on students. This is why we do the work and want to share with you some of the potential that can exist as we're, continuing to work in districts. I'll share one last example, which is on the next slide, which is direct to teacher support. This is, work we do in several districts where really we're working directly with teachers to provide coaching and support. So both building knowledge, but also really providing like weekly coaching to teachers on specific instruction and strategies they need for literacy. So whether this is, how are you really shifting to explicit instruction? How are you constantly using screener and diagnostic data to inform your instruction? How are you doing intentional grouping for your, for tier 2 interventions? So working directly with teachers on building those skills and implementing them into their classroom. So I know that you all have a lot to get to today, and I could probably rattle on for a long time about some of the work that we do. But my kind of call to action for today is, if as you all are navigating and thinking through what the shift is going to look like in terms of how you're supporting literacy in all of your districts, if any of this might be helpful to you all, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Branch Fagans. Both of us are here. We can start off with our usual process is a conversation just to learn more about what is happening in your district, what your biggest priorities are, and then to see if there is a way in which we can be helpful to you all. And so I think on the last slide, Julie, I have contact information for everybody. And if there are any specific questions for me or any thoughts that you all have, I'm here and can be in the chat if you want to directly chat me or email me for the next few minutes. But outside of that, I'll give you all a minute to take this contact information down, and I'll turn it back over to Julie.
Thank you, Kulsum. I just want to second that our partnership with EdConnective has been amazing and incredible, and we are so grateful for the work that they have done in supporting you and coaches around our state to help build their literacy systems within their LEAs and provide that support. We know that it's been a great benefit to many people and are so grateful. And they are such a professional company to work with and really tailor to your needs, and are always there to support and help you. So they are an amazing group to work with. So we just love the partnership that we've had with them, and so grateful for them and the work that they have done. So
thank you so much.
And the friendships that we've built along the way. So thank you so much. We appreciate that, the work that they've done. And then I'm going to turn it over now to Dallas for some assessment updates.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today. We just have a couple updates about both Acadians Reading and RISE that we are going to discuss. So on our next slide here, we just have our Acadians end of year testing window. Just a reminder, we are currently in that statewide 8-week window. It opened up on April 15th and it does go through June 15th. Just a reminder that the data entry window in your SIS and parent notifications do need to be submitted and sent by June 30th. Okay, so you have all the way until the end of June to get that data entered and parent notifications sent out. And then, as you are all fully aware, just a reminder that it is required for grades K through 3 to take the Acadians Reading Assessment, and for grades 4 through 6, it is optional. On our next slide here, I wanted to remind you about the pathway's target goal date. So the student's pathway is correlated with that last date that is set in ALO for your end of window. So your end of year window. So on this example here, you can see that end of year window is set for May 12th. That means the student's goals are correlated for that day. So the system is expecting students to meet their goal by or before that day that is sent. Now, we do have the ability to test after that date because in ALO, it will only let you set a 4-week window, but you do have the full 8-week statewide window to test. So then the question comes up, well, what if you test after that date that is set in ALO? So on our next slide, we have an example of this. So if the student was expected to reach their goal by that end of day window that was originally set, you can see that initial goal there on the screen, but then they're assessed after that day. The system is super smart. It recognizes that students have had extra instructional days, so it increases that goal. So just keep that in mind as you are assessing students, that if you are assessing after that date that's set within ALO, which is okay to do, I don't want to discourage anyone from doing that. It's okay to do. You do have the full 8-week window to assess. But if you do assess after that date, the student's goal is higher because the student has received extra instructional days than the system had originally predicted the student having. Okay. I'm more than happy to answer any questions about that. This is where there was a lot of confusion with this last year. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. We worked with ALO to make sure that these dates matched. Okay. And Natalie in the chat asked where you can see that date that it's set for your district. So within ALO, you have to have assessment permissions. You have to have like district level permissions, and you go in and look at edit district. You may not have that capability to do so. If you don't have that capability to do so because it's certain permissions within ALO, reach out to me. I'm happy to look that up for you, or even better, reach out to your assessment director, and your assessment director can look at that as well. Okay, so not everyone will be able to see that just because it's a permissions thing within ALO. You have 2 people within your LEA who work with this. One is your assessment director, your other is your ALO account manager. So if you know who that is, you can ask either one of those people, or like I said, reach out to me. I'm happy to look that up for you. Of course, Natalie. And then on our next slide here, I just wanted to have a little bit of a celebration with everyone. I have been looking at our progress monitoring for February and March of this year. 82% of all elementary schools across the state have been progress monitoring their below and well below students at 90% or above. So that is just huge. I was so excited to see this number. Super grateful for all of you for the work that you have put in, for all of the teachers that you have been working with, and all of your paraprofessionals who have been really making sure to get that progress monitoring in for students. It is so crucial that we are tracking students' progress, seeing what we need to adjust and how we can then help them instructionally. So 82% of all of our schools in the state will be receiving a certificate for progress monitoring. Those should be coming out within the next week or two. So, but again, I wanted to thank everyone for your hard work and your dedication to progress monitoring and just really tracking students' growth. So thank you so much to everyone. And then on our next slide here, we just have a few RISE updates. We are in that end of year RISE window for our summative assessment. Just a reminder that the RISE ELA and writing for grades 5 and 8 will have separate score reports. So your students who are in grades 5 and 8 who take the writing assessment will receive both an ELA score and a writing score. Also within the writing, the students will receive 2 separate scores. This is new for this year. This was not the case in previous school years. The student will receive 2 separate scores. They receive 1 score for the composition of their writing, and they receive a separate score for their conventions. These are intentionally separate. They're not meant to be combined into one single score. Just keep that in mind. Please relate that to teachers that they are intended to be 2 separate scores. And then you can really dive into the instructional needs of the students. You can look at their specific skill gaps and things that need to be targeted. I have linked the RISE reporting user guide on this slide. If you have any additional questions or you want to be able to really dive into those scores more, then you can look at that link. It'll help kind of give some more guidance when it comes to the reports that students are receiving. And again, you can always reach out to me. I did not add a contact slide, but I will throw my email in the chat. That way you have my email. And like I said, you're welcome to reach out to me. Anna Lynn did ask in the chat, how long after testing does it take for the writing scores to populate? That is an excellent question. So the first 500 students who take the writing assessment, those are all sent to hand scoring. The first 500 students will get a score within about a week because those are sent to hand scoring. The purpose of this is just to make sure that our automatic scoring is aligned to what we want it to look like for hand scoring. At this point in the year, we have already had well over 500 students submit their writing. So right now, most students should receive an automatic score. There are a few exceptions. Sometimes the scoring system has a low confidence. So that means that it's not confident in the score. It thinks it has a score for the student, but it's not confident in it. In that case, it does send that student to hand scoring just so we can verify that that student is receiving the correct score. If it gets sent to hand scoring, so if you have a student who doesn't get an automatic score, it means that it's been sent to hand scoring. You should get that score back within a week. Okay, so most students are going to be automatic at this point. A small percentage of students are going to be sent to hand scoring, and you should get that back within the week. Great question. Like I said, I am going to throw my email in the chat. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me through this email, or I will be on here for the next few minutes. So if you have any questions that you want to put in the chat, then I will stay on and I can answer those in the chat. But again, thank you so much for progress monitoring. I can't even tell you how excited I was to see those numbers. So thank you, everyone. Those are all of the assessment updates that we have for this month.
Great. Thank you so much, Dallas. And now I am going to turn the time over to Katrina Hurd, and she's going to talk to you about some Science of Reading posters.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me crash your meeting. Nice to see all of you. So the preschool team at USBE has been working with our content area teams to help draw some or build some bridges to help close the gap between preschool and kindergarten. And one of the things that we really are hoping to see is many of our preschool educators are trained in letters early childhood. So they've got some really good science of reading practices happening there. And we would like to help build a bridge of connection between the science of reading practices in preschool and how those go into science of reading practices in kindergarten. So with our partners at Envision Utah, we developed these 2 posters. And just a small bit of backstory, when I was teaching kindergarten, I had handmade versions of these 2 in my classroom. So it's fun for me to see these like really well done, professionally designed posters, because I'm like, oh, my little baby handwritten posters all grown up. But yes, so the idea for these posters is that they are designed to complement a curriculum used by whatever LEA because they are based on the science of reading. So it does not matter what tool is being used. These are just good, solid, evidence-based practices. The intent is that a teacher displays these in their classroom in a visible location wherever literacy instruction happens, and then uses them as a reference guide as they're teaching. One of the reasons we thought of doing posters is because if you have volunteers or parapros that come in, maybe they're not in your classroom all the time, maybe they're not fully trained in science and reading practices, this is a good anchor to give them some language to use. And then we're hoping that we'll see some strong connections between developing literacy in preschool to developing those same skills and continuing to build on those in kindergarten. Here's the best news. Envision Utah is taking care of all of the printing and will deliver these one set for every kindergarten classroom in your LEA. So next slide. We're also going to send a parent resource with these as well. So the parent resource has a little bit of guidance for parents at home. It comes from Envision Utah, and Broom is their parent support app. So when you say like, yes, we want posters, it'll ask you on average how many kids are in each class, because Envision Utah will print a parent resource for every parent as well. We know you don't know for sure how many kids are going to come, so just give us like an average and we'll estimate as best we can. You'll notice that the parent resource has some guidance, but it's still not quite clear on what a parent is supposed to do with these. That's on purpose because we are hoping that teachers will take a minute to explain to parents. Like they won't just be inserted into a backpack for later. Couple of questions I see in the chat. Rebecca, we will be letting you know about the requests that have already been submitted, probably end of July. We're still collecting from all of our programs information, but I do know because I've been in the spreadsheet a little bit yesterday, have your info. So you're good. And then, yes, end of July is when you should be expecting to hear from Envision about when they can deliver, how they'll be delivering, who they should contact. So the other question is, will they be available in PDFs? Not yet. And that is my one request for this group is you'll have access to this presentation. Love it. Yay. Please don't print from this because the resource as it has been developed is not ADA compliant. So we're still developing that ADA compliant version that we can then send out a PDF to print. As long as we do the printing, we can ensure the compliance and we're good. So that's just my one little caveat is like, these are great, but don't print them yourselves yet. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Here is how you get your posters. And I also saw Denise put it in the chat. Thank you so much, Denise. Let us know how many classrooms. There's also a question on this form that says, if we got additional sponsorship to print more, would you want some for like other classrooms, first and second grade, maybe your literacy interventionist? Just let us know, estimate how many more you would like. We're hopeful that we could do a second round of printing. And then last one, this is contact information. The preschool team has a training request portal. So if you use that tiny URL and enter in a training request, we can come and deliver training for your teachers on how to use these, what that looks like. You can also just shoot me an email. I'm going to be recording some videos of what it would look like to have these in a classroom. I just set up yesterday with a couple of friends of mine to go into their kindergarten classrooms. And I'm super excited because there's just a little piece of me that misses that a little bit. So we'll be doing some videos as well. And then Envision Utah is a great resource. Their early learning project really wants to help support parents and families. And if you're doing like a family literacy night, or if you would like to do a family literacy night or a back to school night, they love to come present, engage, connect with families. They can present it to staff or families and families. Both they have a lot of really great information as well. Whew. Okay. Thank you again. And yeah, I really hope that you all are able to make use of these. I also will stay on for a few minutes if you want to chat me here.
Hey, thank you so much, Katrina. She spent a lot of time working on these posters, and we can see how they can be a benefit to having in the classrooms and being able to reference. So thank you so much for that. And now I am going to turn it over to Harmony, and she is going to do some instruction on oral language. Thanks,
Thank you,
Harmony.
Julie, and good morning, everyone. Um, I hope this slide here, it looks very familiar to you by this point as we've been talking about Snelling and Hume's Reading as Language model over the course of this year as part of our literacy directors meeting, and hoping to raise awareness that oral language development is critical to literacy skill development. And you can see in this wave version of the model how language is foundational to all of the other literacy skills that students will develop. And over the course of this year, we've talked a lot about how teachers can support literacy development or language development, excuse me, in the classroom. But today we want to focus a little bit more on how we can support parents and caregivers in understanding the importance of language development in the home. So if we can switch to the next slide, Julie. There we go. So what we know is that caregiver and child interactions serve as the primary channel through which children grasp the nuances of language. And as children's first and foremost teachers, it makes sense that their caregivers' understanding of language development and what they can do to support that can have a very powerful impact on children's language development. The impact of these interactions between caregivers and children is based on the quantity, which is absolutely vital, but the quality, which is addresses the diversity and complexity of the talk, is even more significant. And then the third characteristic that influences the impact of the interactions on language development is the caregiver sensitivity and responsiveness. So if we can look to the next slide then, because oral language is so critical to literacy development, and we know that learning begins at home, when caregivers and children do simple things together, it is important that we do our best as educators to share the message with parents about how important the role they play with their children in the home is to helping their children become prepared to be successful literacy learners in school. And this is an important message for parents of young children before they ever enter school. So sharing this information maybe at kindergarten, at registration, at parent nights for all ages of students, because language learning continues throughout the lifespan. It's an unconstrained skill. Sharing it with your district preschool programs and parents there can also be a way that we can get this message out to parents to start early working on language with their children. So on the next slide, some of the things that we need to make sure that parents and caregivers understand is the all-important role that they play in children's language development, and that language development is important for children's academic learning, their communication, their being able to organize their thoughts, to problem solve, to be successful in their social and emotional skill development, and that oral language enables them to develop self-regulation skills that are critical throughout life. But then, of course, with our group here, the thing that is especially significant to us on the next slide is that how critical oral language is as the foundation to literacy. We know that strong spoken language skills predict success in reading, writing, and overall academic achievement. So we can flip to the next slide. Parents need to understand why oral language development is so critical to literacy development. For the one of those reasons is that it enables the decoding of words. As kids tune into the sounds of language, they'll be prepared to recognize and utilize those sounds as they blend and segment words for reading and spelling. It also helps build vocabulary. Kids who have lots of interaction with their parents are going to have a large bank of vocabulary words that help them to recognize and understand words when reading. Also, it provides a sense of how words are organized to make sense and what sentence structure looks like or sounds like. It also supports children's text comprehension. When children are engaged in discussions with parents or they hear oral storytelling, that provides the framework for organizing their thoughts, which then can be transferred into coherent writing. And then finally, as parents and children or caregivers and children talk together, the child's understanding of the world is expanded, and it provides context that makes reading material more meaningful when they encounter it later in text. So you can turn to the next page. or slide. Thank you. I'm a book girl. I want to turn the page instead of the slide, I guess. Um, the power of talking with children is significant. Research has made it clear that talk in the home is correlated to vocabulary size as students enter school. And then the size of a child's vocabulary is then strongly correlated with reading comprehension and overall academic success. So talking with children facilitates their ability to put thoughts into words, develop an awareness of others, increase their language development, and even help them to use their imagination as they create mental pictures of another story, another person's story, and that prepares them again to develop those critical literacy skills. So this is not a complicated ask that we have for parents. In fact, there's 3 things on the next slide that can help parents to maximize the power of talk. And they are tune in, talk more, and take turns. And we look at the research for what makes those interactions between parents and children most impactful. One is that parents need to truly tune in and pay attention to what children are saying and build on it. Make sure that their conversations are very responsive to what the child is focusing on and that they build off the child's conversation with their comments and their interests and respond in ways that can extend the conversation. When we talk about talking more, encouraging parents to turn off electronics and talk together instead, using a wide variety of words and encouraging children to expand their sentences. And that quantity of talk is critical, but even more critical is the quality of that talk. And this comes again into that taking turns, where we're engaging in back and forth conversational exchanges that are about authentic and meaningful topics to the child. So if you'll flip the slide, just to go a little bit more into those back and forth responsive conversational turns, you'll remember from earlier LD meetings that we strive for 5 conversational turns, both as educators in the classroom, but also as families and caregivers with their children. The responsive conversational turns are more important than the sheer number of words that children hear. And when we talk about a conversational turn, you'll remember that that's marked by a change in speaker. So each time a different person is talking, that counts as a conversational change or conversational turn. And we like to think about it kind of like tennis, that it's a serve and return kind of situation, that the adult uses open-ended and follow-up questions to extend that conversation back and forth with the child rather than stopping after one question and answer exchange. And then when we think about when to talk, we want parents talking all the time. They can talk while waiting in line, during meal times, while traveling, while running errands, during daily routines. Anytime that they can, they should be talking with their child. And a little mantra is don't just do it, talk your child through it. So as they're going through these daily routines, they can be talking through, narrating what's happening, asking questions, expanding children's vocabulary through conversation. So 2 more slides, I believe. Go to the next one. And we can't talk about building children's oral language without addressing the important power of read alouds and encouraging children, no matter what age their children are, to read aloud with their children every single day. The quality and quantity of parents' reading engagements with their children are consistently associated with children's cognitive and language development. They can have very rich conversations around text that would not happen in just the normal conversation they might have during daily routines. And when parents read aloud with their children, they're building vocabulary. The text prompts conversations as they ask questions and make predictions and make connections to life that are meaningful to the child. And then, of course, we want to encourage parents to reread favorite books with their children because that's how they hear that language again and again, and those new words become part of their own vocabulary that they can take ownership with. So we'll go to the last slide here. To support you in this, we are sharing the presentation, which includes some of the slides that I've gone through today that we've shared at community literacy nights throughout the state for parents about boosting your child's oral language skills. So those can be accessed there. There's also a handout that went along with that you can access. And then we also created some conversation starter cards that you might want to share with parents that will give them, they can pull a card and it gives them little cues and questions of things they can talk about with their child over dinner or during those everyday routines. And then finally, at the bottom, we've linked a podcast that's with Dr. Ann Kaiser, who has done extensive research in early language development. And in this podcast, she discusses how the earliest years of language learning lay the foundation for reading and academic success, and the role of a responsive and linguistic rich adult-child interactions in accelerating that language development. So we hope that you will find these useful in spreading the message about the critical role of language development with those in your LEAs. And please reach out if there's any other support that we can provide for you on these.
Yes, lots of love coming your way, Harmony and Denise, in the chat box for taking the time. And we hope that you have found it beneficial to learn a little bit more about oral language in each of our literacy director meetings, as we have kind of focused on this year, because the more research we hear about and know about, we're learning more and more how critically important that oral language development and those skills are. And that impacts, even our youngest, in that birth to age 5. And I'm sure Katrina will second this in that space of how critical developing that oral language is in those ages, so that they can be prepared to enter into kindergarten ready, and then also how we can build upon that. And as we look at our students that are in that kindergarten space that are struggling, many of them come back to having that deficit in that oral language development space. And so how we can help and support them. And Harmony has shared also, she talked about briefly those slides that are here on this slide that are linked and are also in our folder. Are the slides that we used for our parent engagement nights as we did our regional literacy nights around the state to share. So if you have an event coming up, or if you look to doing one in the future where you're having, or a school is doing a literacy night for parents, you're welcome to take the slides and use them to support that oral language development and in your areas and in your space. So thank you so much. And we are a little bit ahead of time because I think now we were technically scheduled for our break. We are going to still do our 10-minute break. So we'll come back at like 9:50. We'll give you 12 minutes. So it's 9:55. Grab a drink, stretch, whatever you need to do, because this is going to give us more time to talk about legislative session and SB 241, which is pretty complex. So we will talk about that when we come back. We'll say 9:55. So take a quick break, get a stretch, grab a drink, get a power bar or something that can give you energy to get through the next little bit. Okay, we'll see you in about 12 minutes. All right, we are right back at 9:55, so we will dive in and go ahead and get started with this. Like I said, we're a little ahead in our agenda, which is great because that gives us more time in this section, which we felt like we were probably pushing to be able to get done with. So we are going to jump into legislative session now. And as we get started, I wanted to point out to you this link here on this slide links to our legislative summary. Oh, sorry, I'm not even at the beginning of it. Also referenced as the bill book. So if you have heard rumors about what this bill book is, that is what this is here. It has information regarding all of the bills that impact education. And so if you have questions or need information about a specific bill, you can jump into this bill book. It talks about the funding, where the funding went. It has kind of these one-pagers spotlighting some of the ones that are most impacting changes and education. But then towards the end, we do have summaries on each bill that passed and the contact information for who is overseeing that bill in USBE. So that is on this slide. There is a link to that, and it is also available. You can link to it from our homepage at schools.utah.gov. Right at the very beginning, it has, oh, let's see, where do we find the present? Oh, great. We got the presentation. Denise is dropping that in the chat box. So that is where you can find that. And then as we get started into SB 241, I know this is everybody's hot topic, what they are probably here to learn and get information about. I do want to mention again, I said this at the top of our meeting, but just wanted to reiterate as we jump into this legislative session piece that we are aware that there are outside entities providing webinars regarding SB 241. Please know that they are not representatives of USBE, the superintendent, or any board members. So please keep that in mind as we go throughout this presentation. And you can kind of see that there's a lot of pieces to SB 241, and I've kind of put them on this little gear, and we're going to dive into each of these pieces as we go throughout just this specific bill, because I know that this is going to be more depth than what your superintendents heard from superintendency. That's because we know you guys are probably going to be the ones that are implementing this bill, and the work is going to fall to you, and you need to know the ins and outs of it. So we are going to dive a little deeper into this than what was shared with superintendents. So you can see that we've kind of chunked this into 10 pieces where we have the funding, the goal, assessment, curriculum, monitoring, evaluation, coaching, parent notification, individualized reading plans, and retention. So we kind of took a lot of those things that we felt like we could get through pretty quickly and put them at the beginning. And then we're going to dive deeper into that individualized reading plans and retention that are going to be a little bit more in depth towards the end so that we can kind of get through this in a timely manner. Kudos to everybody on my team who is working on this bill and all of the pieces that they're going to speak about and talk about as we go throughout this presentation. Also linked on this slide is the direct link to SB 241. I realize that as we get into this, some of these are going to be very wordy slides. That is because we wanted to share with you the exact code language and talk to you about what that means. So here we go. We are going to jump right in. So the first thing we're going to talk about and discuss is the funding piece of this. So we kind of look at funding into like 4 different kind of buckets of money with SB 241. So the first bucket of money aligns with this literacy coaching and training. So it talks about the base amount of funding for each district and charters. I know, like, I feel you. We know that it seems inequitable, but we'll talk about your funding piece in just a minute. So hang tight and hold in there. So this this base funding is 75,000 for every district that is not part of a RESA. And then each RESA will also receive a base funding of 75,000. Then there's this other piece, oops, sorry, skipped this piece where it says the remainder of the legislative appropriations. This is referring to the previous funding that we were receiving from SB 127. So SB 127 had 9,644,000 in ongoing funds that USBE received. That funding went to pay for our USBE coaches that were out in the LEAs. It paid for initiatives like Ed Connective, the Kids Read Now books, change management, the community engagement piece. So all of those things were being paid for out of this 9,600,000-ish pot of money. That money is now being shifted and reallocated to districts that are not in a RESA and to RESAs for coaching and training. So what this looks like, and your business administrators and superintendents have been giving your exact funding, but I'm going to kind of walk you through scenarios of what this may look like. So if we have LEA A, who is not part of a RESA. This is the funding thing that the finance people walked me through, how this is divvied out. So they are not part of a RESA, so they don't have a RESA here. Their average daily membership for K through 3 students, we're just saying, is 10,000. And the percentage of the total ADM, that 10,000 students, equates to like 7.5%. So they would receive the base of, and these are totally fake numbers, as you can see, like Julie doesn't do math. We just did simple straight across the board, like make up numbers. They're receiving the base amount of 75,000. And then based off of their ADM, oh my goodness, I have to remember, I can't click. Based off of their ADM percentage, they would get 750,000 of that 9.6 that funding to also go for coaching and training. So we're just talking about this piece right here. LEAB is part of a RESA, and they're part of RESA Z. So they have 4,000 students of their average daily membership in K through 3. But because they are part of a RESA, they have 0% of the ADM. Because their percent of the ADM is being put into the RESA's total percentage. So they do not receive a base funding, and they do not receive coaching and training funds because that is funneling through the RESA. We have had many meetings with the RESA directors. They are also aware of this funding, and each RESA is going to handle that funding within their RESA, how they're doing that. So RESA Z here, the total percentage of the ADM of all of their districts that are in their RESA, say, is 3%. They get that base funding of 75,000 plus the ADM percentage, which would be about 300,000. So I know it seems like a lot of math and a lot of like finance talk, but that is how it is being divvied up. So I know that in the bill, when the bill passed, it said 16 million. In the in SB2, where they shift the funding around, it's either SB2 or HB2, I can't remember which one, but where they shift the funding around, they moved the ongoing funds from SB 127 to this, so there is a total pot of 25 million-ish dollars. That is where this is coming from. So keep in mind this coaching and training column, this second column, is the additional money based on the ADM. Again, your business administrators and your superintendents have been given this information also. And to just jump back, what can that funding be used for? It can be used to hire coaches. It can be used to also Like if you wanted to shift funding from a literacy coach that is already existing in a school to being this funding, you are welcome to do that. Just know that they can't be like a general coach for all of the subjects and all of the grade levels. They would have to be a specific literacy coach in K through 3. So keep that in mind if you're shifting funding. It could also be used to provide training. And we're going to talk about that training in a little bit because that training does kind of fall on like literacy coaches. And, it's training for teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals. So that is what that funding is for. Okay, now we're going to jump to the next piece of funding. So the second piece of funding with this is dividing the 15 million out to districts and RESAs that are districts that are not part of a RESA, and then to the RESAs. And this funding is to provide paraprofessionals who support literacy. I have had a couple of calls from business administrators already that have said, can this be used to fund paraprofessionals that we already have? Yes, again, with the caveat that they are supporting literacy in K through 3. So it does get tricky because if you wanted funding for the paraprofessional to do literacy and be like outside playground supervisor, the playground supervisor piece would have to come from different pot of money. So the money that is used with this 15 million is to support literacy in K through 3. So that is what they would be doing. So you can hire or you can use it as funding to support people who are already there, as long as they are only supporting K through 3. Okay, I'm going to check really quick. RESA is a new term. Can you expand that for me? Yes, thank you for Piper who put that in there. If you are if you're part of a RESA, you would probably know that you're part of a RESA. So what does this look like? So this is our next column of paraprofessional funding, which is also based off of the annual daily membership of the percent of students that are within your K through 3. So that 15 million is set aside. So you can see here that this LEAA would get the 75,000 base, the 750,000 for training and coaching, and then 1.5 million for the paraprofessional funding, for a total of the 2.25 million. LEAB, that is part of a RESA, does not get this additional funding because this is going to the RESA. So the RESA here would receive, say, 600,000 for a total of 900,000. So those are the two pots of money. Yes. We'll talk about Kids Read Now, yes, later. So we have a slide for that later. Okay, the next piece of funding, so funding piece number 3. This is for charter schools. So the $1 million to total the 16 million of ongoing is we are giving that to the charter board, and the charter board is going to distribute that to the charter schools. It is the charter schools will, the charter school board will decide how that is going to be distributed. We don't know what they are doing with that as of yet. So that is information that will have to come from the charter board. And I know our finance team is letting the charter board finance people know. So they will be responsible for deciding how that is going to be, that 1 million is going to be distributed. The fourth funding piece, the fourth funding piece that I didn't count in here is the 150,000 that is supposed to go to USHE, the state board, and for the center, and to work on a plan for literacy in the higher ed space. So that funding is a separate pot, and it's going towards that. And then the other piece of funding that is tied to SB 241 is the TSSA funding. And I believe we have Krista Hotelling on with us. And Krista is over the TSSA program. And I am going to let her talk to you about this funding piece. So, Krista, I will turn it over to you if you are here. Oh, there she is.
I am.
Yay, Krista's back with us.
I know. It's like being back home sometimes. But it's good to be here with everybody today. Yes, I do oversee the TSSA program, the Teacher and Student Success Act. And really, at USBE, it's just we get the funding to the LEAs. And then as far as what the LEAs and the down to the school principals for writing those TSSA plans, that is all at the LEA. They create the framework, all of that. So with this amendment to TSSA, there's been a lot of discussion as in those plans that those principals turn into their LEAs are supposed to be approved by June 30th. And these amendments that this new bill put into place for TSSA do not go into effect to July 1st. So, like I said, a lot of discussions, some talks with superintendency here at USBE, and thinking about how to best support LEAs and school principals with this new amendment to TSSA. It was recognized that that timeline is just makes it a little wonky for everybody. It was going to be hurry up and rush because LEAs need to have a framework for using these TSSA funds, and then the principals have to write the plan based off of that framework that the LEA has developed. So there was going to be a lot of amending things, doing board meetings again, because everything needs to be approved by your local boards. And so USBE recognized this. And so the superintendency has put together some guidance to our LEAs as far as how to move forward with these amendments in TSSA. So it has been decided as a best option for our LEAs that an LEA may choose to use the next school year, so the 26-27 school year, to start the school year. So whatever I already know most TSSA plans are going to your boards to be approved or have already been approved. I know that the TSSA people within LEAs start this process with their school principals like in January. So knowing as literacy directors, you probably don't do a lot with these funds. So this information is going to be shared with superintendents and charter school directors for them to also share out to their staff that do work with the TSSA and business administrators. So as far as the use of these funds and getting it set up for LEAs, this information will be shared out with everybody. I'm just waiting for our finance people to go through the final approval of every LEA's allocated amount for TSSA. As soon as we have that, then everything's being sent out to your superintendents and charter directors. But going back to what we're looking at here to support everybody in this process is starting with the start of the 26-27 school year, LEAs will start working on amending their frameworks because the frameworks is what tells the principals what they can use their funds for. After we send the funds, the LEA gets their funds, then they do their calculations and distribute to the schools. That's all done at the LEA level. And so that framework tells the principals these are what you can use the funds for. And so the LEAs are going to have to go through and amend their frameworks, which then need local board approval. So giving the beginning of the school year to do that, and then prep their principals of you now have this new part of the TSSA code that 50% of the funds that the LEA has now allocated to the school, that if they have not met that statewide reading goal, 50% of their funds need to be used to support early literacy. So there's going to have to be some conversations at the LEA level to support those principals in that. So we wanted to make sure they had time to do all of this. And so that framework gets approved. The LEAs can then start having those conversations with the principals. And then, like I said, usually about January, I know that there are those in your LEAs that are working with the TSSA funds and the program itself are working on setting those dates for when the plans need to be submitted. A lot of times I know they go along with the TSSA plan, or not TSSA plans, trust lands, sometimes school improvement plans. All of those are coming together as all the goals are dealing with improving student outcomes. So information gets to principals. Principals start bringing their teams together, writing their plan for these funds, and then ensuring that they have the data. So wanted to make sure there was final data available as well, because right now it would be raw data. So you'll have your those principals will have their final data, which would be their end of year 26 data, to be using to help make that determination of, are we at the statewide goal for reading? Then here's our 50% of funds, because they're going to have to put that in the plan. They write their plan. It goes back to the LEA for approval. So the LEA is going to be checking to see all of the statewide goal, yes or no, 50% of your funds allocated to this, approve the plan, and then the school goes back to implement the plan. So LEAs may use the 26-27 school year to get everything set up, because you're working towards compliance. And then starting with the 27-28 school year, frameworks will be all amended, approved. Principals will know what they're supposed to be doing with the new information through training with the LEAs and writing their plans. All those plans will be approved with the new part of the TSSA code, and everybody will be in compliance. So it's something that the superintendency, after looking at some options, the best way to support our LEAs. And so the opportunity for LEAs to work through this process during the 26-27 school year. So that is some guidance that USBE will be sending out, but also wanted to provide to all of you as well at this time. Let's see. I will let, I'll let the literacy team answer the question specifically to literacy. So.
Okay, I'm also going to, as you were speaking, Krista, I was kind of jotting down a timeline. Fix my timeline that I just dropped in the chat box if I messed up on that. But it is not based off of the 60% typical or higher in K through 3 on pathways. We're going to get into what the goal is in just a moment. I think that's our next, it might be our next slide or the slide after. I can't remember, but it's coming up. The goal is 80% of students reading on grade level, which they changed the definition of reading on grade level. So we'll get there in a second. Okay. Yes. Okay. And I just wanted to jump to the next slide that has Krista's contact information on there. So if you have any questions, please contact her, but know that she is working with those who oversee the TSSA process, and that will be coming down through your LEA. And thank you, Piper, for your kind comment in the chat box. So what? Go ahead, Krista.
I was just gonna say, if as literacy directors, as you're working with principals and they have questions, first go to the LEA, find out who that person is at your LEA, because the LEA is setting up that framework, and that's what's driving the plan. So sometimes when I get questions, I actually have to direct back to the LEA because all I see is frameworks. Plans do not come to USBE from the schools. They all stay within the LEA. So all we have is the frameworks that the LEAs have developed. So as far as what the LEA approves in those plans, that's what that's at the LEA decision making model. And so as you get questions about using these funds and things like that, my first recommendation is to go back to who's ever looking at or overseeing the TSSA within your LEA, and then they can reach out to me if it's something that at that level they need a little bit more guidance or looking at some other things, because then I can also bring in our finance team who can help with answering some of those questions specific to the different percentages, because there's other percentages that go into these funds. They are part of the minimum school program funding. So there's other calculations and things that happen as well, even before they get to the LEA. But even within the TSSA code itself, there are other things that the LEAs have to take into consideration as they distribute these funds out to their schools. So there's a lot of that at that level that if there's questions that are coming up about the funds, that the LEA is the best, I say person, but your best starting point as far as helping to understand some of those funding allocations out to the schools. And your timeline is correct, Julie. And so, yeah, it's going to be sometime during the start of the school year. Start working, your LEAs will be looking at the framework, making those amendments, approval. Anytime after that framework is approved, that's when we can see that they're going to be talking with principals and letting them know this is where we're going. So like I said, this will be sent out. We're saying LEAs may choose to use that year. And it's not going to be an out of compliance because it's going to be looked at as the LEA is working towards compliance with full compliance at the start of the 27-28 school year. So I hope that helps. Lisa, the only thing that comes to me is the LEAs submit their frameworks in Utah grants. So nothing comes directly to me. It all goes through Utah grants with the LEAs. And the plans themselves that the schools are writing, they just go to the LEA. Nothing comes to USBE other than the frameworks that the LEA submits after the start of the new fiscal year.
Hey, Krista, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
When you're looking at data, making these plans, because nothing ever seems to line up, you're looking at 26, like this year's data, to make a plan for 27, 28. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's to make the determination of whether they've met the state reading goal or not.
Okay, so let's say
the
that
LEA,
they didn't in 26, but then they do in 27. Do they still, I mean, because it's.
Yeah, that's something at the
'Cause it's
LEA.
like
That will be the LEA decision when they're
Okay.
making their framework of
Okay.
how they want, but that's what we're giving the opportunity. Like, did you make the state? And really, it's that statewide goal. This is really just for did we make the funding? If not, or did we make the goal? If not, we need to dedicate 50% of our funding to support early literacy. That's not necessarily driving the goals of the plan. It's driving the funding piece of the plan.
Right.
So when it comes to thinking about the literacy goals, again, I'm going to leave that to Julie and the rest of the literacy team to provide the guidance on that. But when we're talking about that 50% in the TSSA, it's the funding piece. That's really what's driving that is, do we use 50% of our funding that our LEA allocated to us towards early literacy or not? And that's just that looking at whether they've made that goal or not. So their plans and everything and what they put in their plans, that's direction from the LEA.
Okay. I understand. It just seems like what you have to submit comes out before the outcomes of does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have to submit your TSSA plan before you get your outcomes. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of little things. If you read the whole TSSA, like I can put the code numbers in. There's a few of them. I can put them in the chat box if you want to read through what the TSSA code sets up as far as what for the LEAs to support their schools in writing their plans. I do not, Karen, because the right now it's what the new code says as far as interventions and things like that. I can tell you that the TSSA code itself is focused on improving student academic achievement and school performance. So that states that funds are to be used for things that will help in achieving that. So it does include some stipends for staff that are or your personnel who are working outside of regular hours. It does include new personnel to support improving student outcomes. It does support supplies and materials, early childhood education, technology, before and after school programs. But I will drop the 6 different codes for TSSA. And it's the 1304 code. I'll put that in there. That will say, like, will list the different things that the funds can be used for to support outcomes. So I will get those put in. So you can take a look at the code itself.
Yep. And then also just referencing what it says here, evidence-based strategies and practices for addressing low literacy rates in alignment with the science of reading, and then reading interventions in accordance with the literacy interventions piece toward the end. So it's not prescriptive, and and then Krista has like those allowable uses in the code. So. And just keep in mind that, like, this is nothing like just reiterating what Krista said, we as USBE do not ever see a school's TSSA plan. That is all done at the LEA. We just see the framework that each school bases their plan off of. And so I would just say, like, if you have concerns, I would talk to your business administrator and your superintendency and those who are over the TSSA within your LEA to ensure that you are using the funds, that their funds are being used correctly. And because if it were to be audited, it would be an LEA level audit, not like a USBE level audit. If that makes sense. So, and thank you, Krista, for taking time out of your day to jump in and share that with us. I know it's a lot, and there were a lot of questions, and I'm so glad that we have somebody that we know and trust and love so much to be over this and help us through this transition. And we're excited that we get to work with Krista again. So thank you so much for coming. And then we are going to move on to the next piece, which is the goal. So I am going to turn this over to Courtney.
Yes, so we've kind of hit this a couple of times already, but the goal, according to this new SB 241, is that reading on grade level will be students that score at or above benchmark for whatever grade level assessment. So kindergarten through 3rd grade. We just want to kind of reiterate, though, according to Acadians, your chance of getting to be green or blue the next benchmark is 80 to 90% if you score in the green. And so we still want to really strive for blue. We know that's where the high correlation comes with, like, getting proficiency on RISE. And so just keep in mind that although reading on grade level was redefined at or above, we want to still strive for that blue. And currently we are at 70%, and our goal is to get to that 80% by 2030. If you want to go to the next slide, Julie. Here it breaks down just in a little table that shows that we're trying to go to 80% by 2030 of our 3rd graders. And you can see the colors on the left that just show the proficiency level. So it's going to be green or blue, what that status means, and then the mandated action according to the bill. So they would just, if they're green or blue, they'll just get your standard core instruction using that evidence-informed materials. If they're yellow or below benchmark, we need to provide formal notification to guardians, and we'll get a little bit more into that as we go on, and going to create an individualized reading plan, or an IRP. That's going to be our new little initialism that we go through. And so we'll get more into those as we keep going. And then our red or our well below benchmark kids need intensive support. They have to have a mandatory individualized reading plan, and an immediate implementation of skilled reading interventions. And when we look and say, what is that? That language comes right from the bill, and scaled reading interventions are just those evidence-based reading interventions. And we'll get a little bit more into that as we go throughout each of the different areas. So that's kind of where we're headed with that. And I think we're on to kindergarten now, which is you, Julie, I believe.
Yep, this is back to me. So there's a couple of pieces with assessment that are in the bill as well. So one of them is this code 53G-7-205 regarding kindergarten assessments that are done prior to the school year starting. So these would be assessments that are done like at your, if you have like kindergarten roundup, or if you do a more of a diagnostic assessment type of a thing prior to the school year starting. So we do know that you do some right at the beginning of the school year where you're using those school days to do assessment. We're not referring to those ones. These are ones that are done prior to the beginning of school. Schools are not required to do these. They are, it does say here in 4A that they are encouraged to schedule the assessment early enough before kindergarten starting date so that potential kindergarten students, parents have time, and it does say has time in the code. I know, wrong, right? Have time to develop the child's needed skills as identified by the assessment. So they're encouraged to do it. However, this is what was added in. So if they do give an assessment, so if a school does give an assessment at, like, say, kindergarten roundup, then they are required to provide appropriate resource materials to assist the parent at home with the student's literacy development and information regarding the individualized reading plan process. Okay, also keep in mind, this bill does not go into effect until July 1. So I know kindergarten roundup is happening right now. That means that this is not required right now, but next year it will be. So is it good to get that information out to parents anyway? Yes, but we also understand that you probably don't have your individualized reading plan process set right now. So don't feel the pressure that this has to be happening during this year's kindergarten roundup or this time. Where is the Chapter 10, Part 8 literacy interventions? Right now, because it's not officially code yet, it is just in SB 241. So if you are in the actual bill, it is down towards, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. I apologize. It is this section right here. It is all new code. So because it does not go into effect until July 1, it will not be like separate code language, separate code pages in on the legislative website. The only way to access it right now is through the actual bill of SB 241, which we had linked prior. I hope that makes sense. It will be there later on, but that's where it's at. So back to this. So just so you're understanding, the KEEP is still available to be given to use at this time for kindergarten roundup or prior to then. I know a lot of LEAs have taken the KEEP and made adjustments, or they have their own assessment that they're giving. Just know in the future, if they are giving an assessment during that time, that they do need to provide the resources and it is optional to give the assessment. It is optional to give the assessment, but if they do give the assessment, then they do have to provide the resources and the information. Does that make sense? It just says that they're encouraged to give it, so it's not required. But so if we test the 1st of August, then we have to provide those. Yes, as long as it's before, if it's before your start date of school, yes. So, but if it, yep, go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, did I hear you say, like, I know they have the days prior to when school starts. Did you say if it's given then no? But anytime
No, because that is
before,
school, those are
because
school
that are school
days.
days. Okay, so if we give it like a keep prior to the child, like within those 5 days, no. But if we're doing something in the spring, this is a requirement, or something in the summer, something before those days. Okay, so
Yes,
we don't have something district wide for like in the spring or in the summer, but if a school does it on their own, they're still required. So
yes.
if they bring in
Yep.
the kids and do a roundup in the spring, then they are required, but it won't be required until next year.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
okay. So if a school does
Yeah.
it, they need to take care of this. All right. Okay. Thank you
Yes.
for the clarification.
Yes, this is not regarding Acadians. This has nothing to do with Acadians. Keep is also no longer required, but if you're doing the keep before the school days start, before the first day of your school starting, then yes, it would be considered one of these assessments.
What if first
Um,
through eighth grade has started, but not kindergarten? Is that considered start of school or not?
If first through eighth grade, so if you look at your school calendar and your school calendar says the first day of school is this day, but we're using those 5 days of kindergarten, that is still your first day of school. So even though kindergarten is starting 5 days later, your first day of school is considered what the rest of your LEA is doing. Because those 5 days are actually instructional days that are coming out of the school year. So basically, like if you take 5 days, we're saying 180, say you're in there 180 days, your kindergarten still ends the same day. They're just only getting like 175 actual in-school days, but those 5 days are still considered instructional days. I know, confusing. We give Acadians during the first weeks of school. We'll get into notification about Acadians in a minute because Acadians is completely separate. So we'll get into that in a minute. So we can start kindergarten later and test the first few days of school? Yes. I will pull the board rule that has that in it and drop it in the chat box in just a minute when I'm not presenting. You are given, each LEA can have up to 5 days, and there are just like some stipulations on like you have to give an advance warning to parents and things like that. So I will pull that and drop that in the chat box. Okay. And then we will jump to the next assessment. This just kind of is an overview of what I just talked about. So that is kind of what we already did. And then the assessment, we, in SB 241, they changed it from benchmark assessment to benchmark reading assessment. So just that one little change. And then they did include encoding skills, which we know right now is not part of our Acadians assessment. The assessment team is working with Acadians right now because they have been doing pilot assessments that do include encoding. So right now we're in the talks of like, can we add it? Is it going to be an additional cost? So stay tuned. Dallas can answer any questions if you have any directly about that, but we will get information out to your superintendents and assessment directors and to you as soon as we know about that information from Acadians and what we're working on with them. So we are in the talks and working on that. And then the next slide. The only other thing that was addressed here, which we had already changed in R277406 with requiring the Acadians for kindergarten through grade 3, we had already adjusted that in board rule, and all they did was just codify that into code. So it previously it just said in grades 1, 2, and 3, and now they just added kindergarten and 1, 2, and 3. So it is put in code. So that was another adjustment that was made. Like I said, it was already in board rule, but it was just put in code as well. And then I am going to shift it to Courtney to talk about curriculum.
All right, so back to curriculum. We really the only change in this is that you cannot use a curriculum that has a 3 queuing model. And the big takeaway from this is on our checklist that we currently have, that is one of our red flags. However, a curriculum can pass if it has up to 3 red flags. So when we send out the Qualtrics survey this June, there will be a box that has that assurance. But again, this doesn't start until July 1. And so anything that's already been passed and is on the curriculum list, we are like, it's kind of a tricky space. I guess if you have 3 queuing, you're going to have to mark that it does or doesn't have 3 queuing in your curriculum. I think most of the curriculums that we did that are in our review cycle were fine. They will start the next cycle that we do a review cycle, which will be in 2027. If they have any 3 queuing, even if it's only 1 red flag, they will not pass. And that is just according to this new legislation. If you want to go to the next slide, Julie, it has, this just shows where it's in alignment, and it will just have that high quality, and we'll have that Qualtrics survey that comes out in June where you'll put that assurance. So what is an example of 3 queuing? Like, look at the pictures to solve the words, or look at the first letter and guess. Those 3 queuing would have that. And I will drop the link for the approved curriculums in the chat as soon as I'm finished with this. Yes. And the appeal process just got finished, and so those have also been updated as well. Okay. I think that's all with the curriculum.
Yes, thank you, Courtney, with the curriculum. So jumping to monitoring, sorry, I am still working on getting that code for the kindergarten. Hang on, I think I got it. There you go. Okay. That code that I just dropped in. Go ahead, Denise.
I was just going to say, before you move on, there were a couple of questions that didn't get answered about an assessment. Are we paying for Acadians for 4 through 6 students?
Yes, that is still in code. And so, yes, it is still available, as Dallas kind of touched on that earlier too. It's required for K through 3 and optional for 4 through 6.
And is the encoding assessment something we will need to implement for the 2026-27 school year?
I don't know if Dallas is still on or if she had to jump off, but I would say stay tuned on that. We will probably be discussing that and get information out to assessment directors. Okay.
And one more, but Krista left, so it might not, it's a TSSA question. The last slide said that by 2030, the TSS for the goal, but the TSSA plan would be for next year.
So the goal is just a state goal that we have 80% of all of the students in the state reading on grade level, so at or above benchmark. And that doesn't, in the TSSA piece of the bill, it says any schools that are below that, so beginning the time when the bill is passed, any schools that are below that have to dedicate 50% of their funds to that. So even though it is before the end date of the goal, They're
Can I ask a quick question about that fund, about the TSSA and the
You
the
can, and
80% goal?
we'll cross our fingers that we know the answer.
I'm just wondering, is that goal school-wide or is it by grade level?
For TSSA, it is third grade. It is
Just third grade.
as school's third grade, yes, because the goal is just for third grade. And then like the state goal is, yeah, that third grade piece
State goal is
too.
just third grade. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Will kindergarten now be included in our data? Before it was 1 through 3. So if you're basing it, it is only third grade meeting that goal. So yeah. Can you link the rule in TSSA so we can, I think Krista dropped the links for the code for TSSA. So we'll try and grab those and drop them again. Okay. Monitoring. So this is a new piece that was added in where what this does is we will be annually monitoring student performance on that statewide goal. So kind of like what we do every year where in the past, where we have released the reading on grade level towards the middle to end of August, first part of September, where each LEA is reaching towards that third grade reading on grade level. The only shift in that now is that instead of reading on grade level being only the above benchmark kids, reading on grade level is now the at and above benchmark kids. So just a little bit of a backstory on that. The board had put the definition of reading on grade level in board rule as above benchmark. The only thing that can trump board rule is code. So what they did is they put the definition of reading on grade level in code, meaning that it is now at and above benchmark. So we are adjusting board rule to align with that. It went to committee in April. So it went to Standards and Assessment Committee and passed out of there in April, and it will go to full board in May. So next week it will be up for full board approval in that. So the definition will be changed to align with what is in code. So monitoring will be looking at student performance towards that statewide goal of third grade reading on grade level, and then each elementary school performance regarding literacy instruction, the science of reading training, and the provisions for reading interventions. So what the monitoring will be looking at is, are those third graders, and this is each school, so it's not LEA wide, it is school, will be monitored to see if they are meeting that third grade reading on grade level percentage of 80%. What is literacy instruction looking like? What science of reading training is being provided? So within each school, so that training will be provided to teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, and then also the provisions for reading interventions. So when we think about what provisions for reading interventions might be, is what interventions are being provided to students? How are the students identified? What is being used as intervention materials? How often are students receiving those interventions? So those are things that we would be looking for to be monitored. No, the goal is now 80% by 2030 instead of, I had a question pop up, is the goal still 70% by 2027? Nope, it is now 80% by 2030. And we changed the metric that we're using. So yeah, we were at 50% because we were only looking at above benchmark, but now we're looking at and above benchmark. So it's 70%. So we would already be at that 70%. So they changed it to 80%. Hope that helps. For this year, will the end of year Utah comparison data percentage be based on the cut off score at above benchmark or aligned to the at and above. We're going to align it to the at and above for this fall because we don't usually because you LEAs have until June 30th to turn their data into us, so we don't start cleaning it and stuff until after that July 1st date and looking at those. And then who is going to provide the monitoring? So if you are in a school district, your local board will need to ensure that they are monitoring each school, but with those things that were just discussed up above. If you're a charter school, your charter school authorizer will be monitoring those things. And then for everybody, you get us. Our lovely team will be monitoring those things as well. We are working on what will that look like going forward. We haven't solidified what ours is going to look like, but we hope to get that information out to you soon. And then I think this is Denise, right? I think Denise, you're going to highlight these changes here.
Yes, thanks, Julie. So wanting to go over the changes in evaluation, and I know it's a lot to read, but we did that intentionally. Everything in black was already in code for evaluation, and it's just the things that are in red that are added. So the first thing for you to know that was added for evaluation is now a principal evaluation program has been added. And for that principal evaluation, one of the lines of evidence that they need to include is kindergarten through third grade effective implementation of the science of reading. So in their evaluation, they need to show that they've had effective implementation of the science of reading. So that's for the principal part that was added. The next slide is for the teacher evaluation. And so for the teacher evaluation, it was the lines of evidence that have been added. So there's two different ones. One is for a teacher in kinder through third, that their evidence needs to include fluency in and implementation of the science of reading. So that's one line of evidence that they need to add. And then the other is for those kinder through third grade teachers, student performance and academic progress on that benchmark reading assessment. So those two things have been added to the teacher evaluation for grades K through 3.
All right, on literacy coaching, we've already touched on this a little bit in the funding, but each regional education service agency or RESA and each school district that is not within a RESA will provide, train, and assign literacy coaches to provide early literacy coaching to teachers in kindergarten through grade 3. They will also ensure the opportunity for formal professional learning in the science of reading for teachers in K3, as well as elementary school principals and vice principals. They will also need to ensure that the literacy coach or teacher has received the formal professional learning in the science of reading, and that is the person that can provide that training of science of reading concepts to paraprofessionals who work with students in kindergarten through grade 3 within the RESA or school district. And then also offer to include employees of charter schools within that relevant regional educational service agency or school district in that training that in the science of reading concepts. And the next one. So when we talk about the literacy coaching roles and responsibilities, the expectation for these early literacy coaches that are working with K3 students is that they will be assisting educators in using data to inform instructional adjustments. They will engage in instructional coaching cycles with educators to build their capacity, specifically in literacy instruction. They will be using principles of adult learning to partner with educators to integrate the professional learning that they receive into their actual classroom practice. They should leverage their knowledge of the science of reading and evidence-based practices to support educators in maximizing student learning. And then also, they are to partner with a school's leader to support school-wide literacy goals to provide a team of support for educators that that connection between administrators and literacy coaches is absolutely critical for coaching to have the impact that it needs to have in our Tier 1 practice. And then continuing on, the literacy coach should deliver consistent and frequent job-embedded professional learning. That job-embedded is when we're applying that professional learning in the classroom setting with that teacher's students, participating actively in professional learning experiences to make sure that they are maintaining their deep knowledge of the science of reading and skills for coaching, and they should also design and facilitate professional learning sessions that strengthen and implement evidence-based practices with educators. And and beginning this is not in 241, but this is in House Bill 312. It adds this piece about the literacy coaching roles and responsibilities that beginning in the 28-29 school year, these literacy coaches will also need to support the integration of social studies content into literacy instruction to enhance both reading comprehension and content knowledge, which we know that incorporating our literacy instruction throughout the content areas is best practice in supporting students' literacy development. That'll just become part of the coach's role to support that as well. And then finally, when we talk about the literacy coaching, this aligns with what was outlined for the roles and responsibilities for our state literacy coaches in previous legislation, and to ensure that literacy coaches' time is spent in activities that will have the greatest impact on improving teacher capacity and student outcomes. We need to make sure that our literacy coaches do not engage in activities that are unrelated to literacy coaching, which would include such things as serving as an evaluator or substitute teacher, clerical aid, so making copies, for example. They should not be a lunch or recess aide, a behavioral therapist, tester, guidance counselor, interventionist, program manager, or contest leader, or any other assignments that could disrupt their ability to support educators in improving instructional practice. And so protecting their time in that way is critical for them to have the impact that we desire them to have with teachers and students. And just a few additional details. Each regional service agency, educational service agency, or RESA, and each LEA that is not within a RESA shall ensure that at least one staff person supports early literacy.
So I want to just quickly point out, I'm going to scroll back to the beginning of these slides, where here we're starting and it says each regional service agency or RESA and each school district that is not in a RESA shall have literacy coaches. Okay, so they are required. Notice it's not charters, but down in this piece, this is each RESA and LEA that is not in a RESA. So this is districts and charters have to have one person on staff that supports early literacy. If you are the literacy director, you are already fulfilling that, right? You guys have one staff person within your LEA already that is supporting early literacy. So just if you're an LD, you're probably supporting literacy. So you probably already have that person identified. Does that make sense? So just make sure you have somebody who is doing that. Yes, the literacy coaching, because the funding, again, the literacy coach is not required for charters, but is for districts and RESAs to have a literacy coach. Now, it doesn't say how many, it just says a literacy coach. So most of you have that already in place. How would overseeing paraeducators fit into the new expectation for literacy coaches? So literacy coaches are expected to provide training for them. And then I would hope that part of that training would be like ongoing coaching of the paraprofessionals as well, like ensuring that they're They know the science of reading. Also, they know and understand the materials that they're using for intervention, and then ensuring that like they have support in implementing and working with the students. Go ahead, Chelsea. Yes.
Hi, thank you. So as a follow-up to that, the funding that is for paraprofessionals, did I freeze or just on my screen did I
We
freeze?
can hear you, but you are frozen, but we can hear you. Oh, now you're back.
Okay. Well, I hope my face isn't in a weird contortion. I have been
You have a
having
very lovely smile. So
oh, good. I've been having some connection problems all day. If okay, so with the paraprofessionals, can any of that funding that is for paraprofessionals be used for their training?
no,
Okay.
that can only be used to, because it says provide paraprofessionals in that piece. So the training for the paraprofessionals has got to come out of the other bucket that is for the coaches and training.
Okay.
That help. Okay. Sorry, lots of questions coming in. So, okay, let me scroll up. Okay. Okay. Is this literacy coach expected to be in place? Yes. I was told that the districts affiliated with our RESA opted not to have one hired there because that is up to your RESA. So you are going to have to work that out with your RESA. I know Piper is on here. I'm not sure if anybody from the other RESAs are on here, but Piper, if you are able to, thinks I'm raising my hand. If you feel comfortable just jumping on and maybe sharing a little bit about how each RESA is kind of handling that differently, and it's kind of based on what their board is deciding to use. I think is where
it
things
is
are at.
a board decision. So yeah, just like local school boards will be part of that conversation for each LEA. That conversation is happening within each RESA board, which is comprised of the superintendents who are part of that RESA. So they are the decision makers. Does that answer the question accurately, Julie, as far as what the question
I
was?
think so. Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Perfect.
Sorry, we don't have any additional information, Ashley. That would, you'd have to ask your RESA on that. Follow up, would they manage the paraeducators and manage intervention data, something that many coaches in our district are currently doing? Yes. So if your coaches are already doing that, yes, it would be the same. Can our instructional coaches that support literacy as well as other content areas and support new teachers meet the literacy coaching role? If you're using the funding that is coming from this bill to pay for those coaches, that would be a no. They can only support K through 3 literacy. But if you are using other funds to pay for your coaches and then you're using this new funding, except for Ashley, you're in a recess, you're not getting, I don't know that you're getting any new money. I don't know how that's working. But then yes, they can support other content areas if that makes sense. So if you're using other funds, then yes, that's fine. Same question. Did that answer that? Did that clarify that? Okay. So are the K through 3 pairs for literacy also not required for charter schools? Correct. So you're getting that 1 million and it can be used for coaches, training, and paraprofessionals. So whatever pot of money you get from that 1 million that is distributed out, it can be used for those 3 things. You're not required to use it for paraprofessionals, but one of those 3 things. Yes, in smaller district, LDs have several roles, correct, but you're at least over early literacy, so that counts. Yes, I know. It's a lot. This bill is a lot. We feel for you. Yes, go ahead, Bernice.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So each LEA is required to have a literacy coach that's over that. It can be at the district level, like a literacy director. Then within the school, so I fulfill all those responsibilities of only having those things. Then within the school, we can have our instructional coaches supporting that, but I would fulfill the requirement of having that person.
Yep. Yep. You don't have to hire anybody new. Correct. Okay. All right. Um, we'll move on to the next piece, which is I think Denise is up with parent notifications. Yay.
Thanks, Julie. I think we all need to take a deep breath too. It's like this is a lot, right? So, um, just wanting to share with parent notification that there are some changes to this. So your previous notification that you've used will not have enough information, so you will need to be changing that. And spoiler alert for what Sammy's going to share in a little bit, we are working on a sample parent notification letter for you that will have all of these pieces, but just wanted to highlight that it is changing and you'll need to add some new pieces. So this is for students in K through 3 who score below and well below grade level on a benchmark reading assessment. The LEA should provide written notification to the parents that the student has demonstrated a deficiency in reading, the description of the services that the student receives, a description of the process for establishing the individualized reading plan, which Sammy's going to talk about in just a minute. And then also, next slide, Julie, on that notification, they need to be notified that retention, especially in earlier grades, can benefit a student's reading proficiency. Notified that if the student scores below benchmark on the assessment at the end of 3rd grade, the student is subject to retention. Notification that the assessment is not the sole determinant of promotion and that additional evaluations and assessments are available. And then a statement that connects the child's proficiency in reading to long-term outcomes of success. So once again, these things need to be added to that letter. We're working on a sample letter and we'll share that with you that will hopefully help you in creating what you want to for your LEAs. So I think for the end of this year, if I'm correct, Julie, you would use your current letters because this does not go into effect until July. But for next year, you will need to use the new letters that include these extra pieces.
Yeah, this would be after you do like your beginning of the year. And I believe Sammy is going to go into like, Sammy and Courtney will go into like, who needs notification when coming up. Stay tuned. But yes, so at the end of this year, you can do your same letters. For your greens and blues, this is not required. They can get the regular letter that comes from Acadience. That's fine, your regular parent notification. This is just for those students who are below or well below benchmark. Any ETA on the sample letter. Hopefully, we'll have them like in the next month or so. So we're Sammy is amazing, and she is working on, and she'll probably share, but she's working on an individualized reading plan handbook that will just be like a whole thing. It's got it all in it. So that is what we are working on to get out to you as a resource. Do I understand correctly that a student can only be retained once? Yes, that is correct. That is in the code, and we will talk about that. Courtney's got that coming up. Yes, and then how does this apply to students with an IEP? Also a question that we had asked. Students with IEPs are not exempt in the bill language. We are working with Kim Fratto, our Director of Special Education, to ensure that we are communicating that correctly between both departments. And so as of right now, our understanding is there is not an exemption, so a student with an IEP could also have an individualized reading plan. So, okay. Over to
Hey.
Sammy.
It's over to me, and I feel like we are all parroting the same thing here. We know this is a lot. This is a ton of information. These slides are very overwhelming, lots of words. So take some deep breaths. You will have this as a resource to come back to. And then, as Julie mentioned as well, we are working on some really great comprehensive resources for you to be able to refer back to. And I'm also going to preface that I have my notes over on this screen and then my camera on this screen, but because this is so much information, if I'm looking over here at my notes, I'm not ignoring you all. Again, it's a lot of information I don't have memorized. So, the individualized reading plans. This is going to be like a high level overview. And again, more information, more resources will be coming out. And this is what we have gathered after going through the bill language over and over and over again as a team to make sure that we're truly understanding what is required. So I tried to break it down into more manageable bite-sized chunks. So first off, I want to talk about what the individualized reading plan, and I'm going to call them IRPs so that I'm not getting tongue twisted. And that is different than an IEP, so we need to make sure we have distinguished those two. So an IRP is the purpose is to define the reading interventions as a student will receive in an intervention setting to remediate a reading deficiency that is identified on a benchmark reading assessment. The who needs a IRP. So this is a lot of words right here, but I thought it was important to note all of this. So a student in kindergarten who scores well below benchmark on the middle of the year or end of year benchmark reading assessment. A student in grade 1, 2, or 3 who scores below or well below. So keep in mind these are yellow and red students on a benchmark reading assessment. Now, you'll note that's a little bit different than the kindergarten. Kindergarten says mid-year to end of year, whereas first grade says 1, 2, or 3 on a benchmark reading assessment, which we are interpreting as beginning, middle, or end of year. A student who an LEA promotes to grade 4 and has not scored at or above benchmark on the benchmark reading assessment during grade 4. A student in kindergarten or grade 4 who does not score at or above benchmark on a benchmark reading assessment. And a student whose parent requests that the student receive an IRP. Go ahead, Julie. Thank you. Okay, so this is what the IRP needs to include. What concepts? Well, we've got concepts on there twice. It says what concepts and concepts students are struggling with. So what deficiencies the students have, what they're struggling with, what intervention and supports the school is going to provide for that student, different ways that the parents can be involved with these interventions, how the progress will be tracked and shared, and then a warning about retention. If the student's not meeting reading benchmarks, they could be retained under state law. Thank you, Julie. Okay, so this is a list of interventions that was specifically noted in the bill. I'm not going to read them all for you. They are listed here for you to refer back to. These are specific evidence-based interventions that are required to be written into a child's IRP who need some interventions. I don't think it's limited to this list. It's an and. Am I correct, Julie, in saying that? Okay, awesome. But this is a good starting point. Those are all listed there. And again, this will be in the handbook, so it'll be something to refer back to as well. Okay, we can move on. Okay, the duration. So how long will this IRP be in place?
So an LEA will need to continue the IRP interventions until the students has met at or above benchmark on the reading assessment, or the literacy team has come together and decided jointly that an adjustment or a modification is needed for a student's literacy plan. Okay, the fine print. So these were a couple of pieces that after reading through this, I felt like it was really important to note because this will be part of the law here. There's a lot of fine print, but these were some really standout pieces. So students who have an IRP must be placed with a teacher who has completed or are completing approved SOR training. So that's a tricky piece there. Those students, we need to ensure that they're with teachers who are adequately trained. After every benchmark reading assessment, the literacy team needs to communicate and review if necessary and make any modifications to the plan, to the student's plan. And then lastly, that the IRP is required to stay with the student's permanent school record. Let's see. I'm seeing some questions. Does that end at the third grade or keep going? Chelsea, are you referring to the needing to be with a teacher?
So the needing to be with the teacher and the actual IRP, like, will we still need to be doing this in 10th grade if this continues for that
Not
long,
to
or does
my
it end in 6th
understanding.
grade or elementary?
So if you go back, Julie, a couple of slides to the who. Right there. So this is going to be kindergartner, student in first, second, or third, or then a fourth grader who has not scored at or above benchmark. So a fourth grader, and then if a parent specifically requests. So that's what we're going to be basing that off of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. But then now, so here's a follow-up. So if a parent requests, so can a parent request in 5th grade, or is it still just the 4th grade for the students who that is their score they have to be, and then a parent can request even if their scores deem them to not need this?
Yeah, the specifics of that were not listed in the bill. The way that it's written, I would assume that yes, a parent in 5th grade could request an IRP. That may be a question we need to take back and try to see if we can get a better answer to that. It's just not specifically stated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I see a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to do my best to go through them really quick. I knew this was going to be heavy. This was a big part of this. So, do we have a list of what is an improved SOR training? So, we have decided that if you are letters trained or you have passed the Utah Foundations of Reading assessment, that would quantify which, in order to get a teaching license in Utah now, in early childhood, elementary education, or special education, that is a requirement to pass it's called a U4A. Those are adequate science of reading training. Does this mean that we need to get our 4th grade teachers SOR trained based on the previous slide? If you have 4th graders who are on an IRP, yes, that would be an answer to that one. The student placement with a teacher SOR trained starts when? When their IRP goes into place.
So it could be as early as beginning of the year this year after they take the beginning of the year assessment.
Okay, and if a school doesn't use Acadience in 4th grade, what other benchmark reading assessment would count? That is a great question. I'm wondering if that would be RISE. Julie, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Sorry, I was looking at a different question. Which one is it?
So if our school doesn't do Acadience in 4th grade, what other benchmark? So I was thinking maybe RISE.
Or like a core phonics,
So
some
like a
sort of
diagnostic.
some sort of fluency type of assessment that you would give. because it would need to be something that can kind of be progress monitored, where RISE doesn't really do that throughout the year.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
more
and
of a
it can
summative.
identify, I was going to say something that can identify a specific deficiency that we can intervene with. Okay.
Yes. And then, yeah, then the next one, SOR assessment, the Euphoria. Yes, we are counting that as if you have passed that, you've demonstrated your knowledge. And each university, Sammy could probably speak to this better, but each university and Apple program has competencies that they have to demonstrate that align with the science of reading. So we feel confident that if they're passing the Utah Foundations of Reading assessment, then they've gained the knowledge of that. And there are other professional learnings out there that do formal training for the science of reading. We know that there's like the teacher's top 10 tools. There are like Ames Web Institute has some formal professional learning, the opportunities that are available as well. We we are going to also try to build out some modules for paraprofessional training, for administrator training, and for teacher science of reading training to help cover like so then it's not as like you're not having to invest so much in that. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, so if we have a teacher who is going through and has not yet taken her Euphora, and we have kids going from kindergarten into first grade into her class, and let's say middle of year, then now they need a reading plan at the middle of year. Do we have to move them out of her class that year, or can we wait till the next year?
So the way the bill reads is, let me find that slide. Oh, maybe it, did I pass it? Right here. Who has completed or are completing. So if they're in the process, then they're fine as well.
Thank you. We missed the are completing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um,
Okay, I'm doing my best to get through the questions here, Julie, too.
Yeah.
The last one, what about interns teaching grades K through 3 who haven't taken the test yet? So then that would not be a teacher that a student with an IRP can be placed with.
Unless, well, if they're in the process of doing it, then they would be
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Oh, here's another one. If we need fourth grade teachers who need to be trained in letters, but it has been canceled, how do we get them trained? Great question. So as Julie just mentioned, we are kind of thinking through some different ways that we can get creative and have some options for science of reading training. There are lots of options out there as well in terms of science of reading training. Am I missing anything there, Julie?
No. And really, like, we don't have oversight over it, so use your best judgment on feeling like if you have provided training to your teachers in the science of reading and that they're knowledgeable. So,
So Bernice, I think that answers the question you just put in there. So, okay. Awesome. All right, let's move on. And please know, as you're thinking through all of this and more questions come up, and that's what we're here for. So make sure you're reaching out and asking, and we'll do our due diligence on our end too to try to get the best answers for you. Again, this is a lot, so we understand if questions keep coming. Okay, so the literacy team, this is mentioned often throughout the IRP process. I believe I just had a question up there as well. Who's responsible for the IRPs? So the bill specifically states having a literacy team built out for any students who have an IRP. So this is what is included in a literacy team. So teacher or any teachers involved. So that would be gen ed teacher, special education teacher, any teachers involved with the child, parents. If a student is reading well below grade level, an LEA representative is required. That is noted that only if they're reading well below benchmark, the LEA representative is required. And then a support personnel. So this is up to the parents, but they are welcome to invite support personnel. I wrote a list of it. So it could be a therapist, a counselor, social worker, translator, friend, or a parent advocate if necessary. And then it is also noted that it's up to the parent's discretion whether to include the student in the literacy team or not. So these are the people that are going to be responsible for the IRPs. Okay, next slide. Can the wording of LEA? It is in the slide notes, Bernice. Just so you're aware. But yes, we can try to add that in as well. So after all of that, like we've already mentioned, we are working on creating a handbook. So my thought process around this is creating, I saw that Iowa had created a handbook around theirs, and I thought that's a really great idea where it's going to have everything in it. So it'll talk about the purpose, it'll talk about the wording of the bill, it will have some sample parent notification letters, it will have sample individualized reading plans, it will have one that is completed too as an example for you. It will have resources as well as a glossary with all of these different terms. Really wanted to create a one-stop shop in terms of these IRPs, literacy teams, things like that. That's going to take a little bit of time. We're working on it. But in the meantime, as a sort of cheat sheet, as you're beginning to kind of dive into this, on the bottom of this slide, there is a linked checklist. I don't know, can you click on it, Julie, so I can just quickly share what that is? This is just a very quick IRP compliance checklist. So this is according to SB 241 bill, what is required in an IRP. So it's got like the timeline, the literacy team, the plan components, the ongoing requirements. It's just a very high level. This is everything that has to be in there. I thought that might be helpful as just like a quick go-to guide as you're thinking through this and before we're able to give you an example model plan. So that is linked in there for you as well, and hopefully that is helpful. Okay, I know that was a lot, and it looks like there are a lot more questions coming in, so I'm going to quickly try to go through those. If we're differentiating ELA instruction, can we place an IRP student with a non-trained teacher there? Okay, I'm trying to reread that to understand that. If we're Oh, shoot. I scrolled all the way down and now I lost what I was reading.
Basically, my question is, if we have non-trained teachers and I've got a child who is designated with an IRP, can that child be placed in a non-trained teacher's room if they're getting their reading interventions and support with an SOR teacher?
That's a good question. Julie, what do you think?
Sorry, I was
No,
distracted.
you're fine. So just asking.
Answering personal chats. I'm so
No,
sorry.
you're
Say it
fine.
again.
So Karen is asking that if you have a child that has an IRP that's in a classroom, like a general classroom with a teacher that's not SOR trained, but then is receiving their interventions in the IRP by an SOR trained individual, does that count?
So this would come down to who is the child assigned to, because I believe it says that they are assigned or must be placed with a teacher. Oh, the fine print. I
Yeah,
want my
it
magic
doesn't,
crystal. I
yeah.
want my magic crystal ball of like, what was the intent behind the wording here? So, I believe the intent behind this is their assigned teacher is SOR trained. So I would try to just have them either be in the process of completing that SOR training or already be trained. So
That
yeah,
sounds
I would count
fair.
that as their like main teacher, not their intervention teacher. Um, and then let's see.
Okay. So mainly the teachers and parents, unless others are asked to join. Essentially, yes. I mean, I would be including your literacy person in all of this as well. Can you clarify LEA for that team? Can a teacher also be the LEA? I think it needs to be an LEA. So this is specific to students that are scoring well below grade or benchmark. The bill has some more specific word. Let me look at the bill because there's some more specific wording around that I kind of pulled out. So Michelle, I will come back to you on that one. Do you have a list? Because oh, we've got the list on there. Oh, thank you, Bernice. I'm glad that checklist is helpful. I was trying to be as helpful as possible because it was a lot for me to wrap my head around. So, we have some classes that are level 2 special education. Are those, as of right now, this is what we're checking with our director of special education in terms of students with IEPs, whether they are exempt or not from these IRPs. We don't have an answer quite back from her. As of right now, our understanding is that these students are not exempt. So yes, they would still need to be with an SOR trained teacher.
And when we did our letters training, when it was a requirement, um, special education teachers were included in that. So um, we would hope most of them are, and then also if they are coming out of universities, they have to also pass the UFORA in order to receive their special education license. So that would count too.
And Apple
So,
programs.
and
So
Apple
Apple,
programs.
yeah.
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 So,
Okay. Awesome. Michelle, I'm going to look up the specific wording on your question and then, oh, you already pulled it up for me. Yes. I think it could be a principal, building leader. So special education
yeah.
teachers can work with students who have, yes. Can it be a person who we would determine as qualified like the coach? I would say yes, because it's not specified. Again, Julie, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yes. Also, we do have Ellen on here from our special ed team.
Oh,
If she wants to share
I
about,
I would be happy to, Julie. I think this
yes.
works a lot alongside special education. We know we still provide tier 2, tier 3 support in the classroom. So absolutely, we would want those students to be looked at as well, knowing that they're included in the classroom often. And yes, they would probably go right alongside those other students in terms of receiving benefit in the classroom as well from very targeted instruction. Does that
Yes.
answer
Thank
the
you.
question, Julie? Is there anything
I
else?
think so.
Yeah, so the question's coming up again. If a student has an IEP, does that mean they don't need an IRP? And no.
I would say they need both because you're looking at how we're intervening in the classroom as well as what is special. Now, if you're pushing in, then of course you could be talking about what in combination you're doing together. But I would definitely think that that student would also need to be looked at, knowing that we're collaborating with both the general education and the special education teacher to do the best we can for that student, knowing that they're general education students first, and that doesn't take them out of that status. We would definitely want to be looking at how we're supporting them in the classroom. It would also encourage that collaboration between both the special education and the general education teacher who make combined a great team and should not be working in tandem or isolation as well.
I would
Yes.
agree. I
And
think too often, sorry, Julia, just this thought popped in. I think too often what we're doing in tier one is not aligning well enough with what the special education student is receiving, and that can be aligned a lot better through this process.
Right. And that's really the goal is, and the reason we've said, try, use the same program unless there's supplemental things that you have to use, because we want the special education student to feel like their extension in getting an intervention does not disconnect them from what's happening in the general education classroom now, especially because we're looking at science of literacy / structured literacy approach. They should both be reinforcing those same exact skills and that same pedagogy in both areas. So yes, that would apply to both. The other thing too is we know that a student with an IEP doesn't preclude a general education teacher from intervening and or even providing that specialized instruction if they're working in partnership with their special education provider or special educator. So yes, what our whole goal is at the state level is to be definitely as teams collaborating together to make sure that the student is getting the maximum amount of literacy or support, both in the general education, either for the push out or the pull out model.
And it does say in the bill as well, on that literacy team, if it includes the general education and the special education teacher on the literacy team. So if a student is already designated as a student with disabilities and needs and has an IEP, that special education teacher would be included in that literacy team, so that they would be working together and they would both be part of that. Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing, Julie? I do think it's important that the special educator who has tested that student, if the student has an IEP, who's tested that student, understands their academic profile and what the areas of struggle are for that student, I would assume he or she or they should be involved in the process of creating that reading plan. That would be something that one team member didn't understand what the plan is, because again, they should be working in tandem to address the issues of that student, depending on the severity or need of that student.
Yes, I would agree, Ellen. Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Ellen, for jumping in on some of that. Julie, I think I was at the end of my portion. We were on the coming soon slide. Let's see. I think we've gotten through.
Yep.
Most
now we're going to turn
questions. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to stop talking now.
There was one where Michelle said the student scoring well below benchmark, needing a of the LEA who is knowledgeable about available literacy resources. So yes, we do look at an LEA level person needing to be on the literacy team. Yes. Okay. Okay. Go, Courtney.
Here we go again. Another big heavy hitter, but it's number 10 and it's the last one. And then hopefully we'll have a few minutes that we can try to answer some lingering questions. So this is just the definition of retention, and I'm going to let you read that, but essentially we're looking for what retention means and how that looks. So what I did, if you'll go to the next slide, Julie, I think it's a lot easier to understand. I tried to take the lot of lines that were in code and I tried to create a table that kind of put all in one picture so we could just have an overlook. So it gives you your grade level, the time of year, and this is not talking about an IRP. When you assign an IRP, this is just speaking directly to retention. So shifting gears a little bit, what test you would look at for retention, and then the performance markers, what kind of retention is required, whether it's discretionary or mandatory, and then we'll get into the last column, which is those good cause exemptions. So in kindergarten, you can see middle of the year or end of year, if they score below or well below, it's discretionary. But what the LEA must do, they shall consider and discuss the value with a guardian of retention. So in kindergarten, anyone that scores yellow or red, middle of the year or end of year, you need to have a meeting within 45 days with parents and talk about what is the value of early retention. And if you don't retain them in kindergarten, that in third grade, if they have not yet met that benchmark, that then they will be, that becomes mandatory. So I try to use bold those ors and ands, so it was easier for you to distinguish which ones can do that. In first grade, at the end of the year, if they're below benchmark and they lack above typical progress and has an IRP. So if at the beginning of the year or the middle of the year, a student scored below, and you created an IRP, and then at the end of the year, they were well below and they did not show above typical progress, then retention is discretionary, but an LEA should consider it. You need to discuss the value. If the student has an IRP already and they lack typical progress. Clear as mud, I'm sure. So essentially, if it's the first time a student scored well below in first grade is at the end of the year, so they don't already have an IRP because they've been at green or blue, then you still need to notify the parent that now they are below and you're going to need to create an IRP, but you wouldn't have to talk about retention at that one because they didn't have an existing IRP. So if you have a kiddo that scores green and blue at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year and then drops down to red, that's who you would have. That would be different than if they scored well below at the beginning of the year. They have that IRP and then they didn't make that typical progress. In second grade, it's exactly the same as a first grader. And then in third grade, it has two. So you have before 29, 30 school year is going to look differently than after. So prior to the 29 and 30 school year, if a student is below or well below benchmark, it's going to be discretionary whether you retain them. However, an LEA shall consider it and discuss the value with a guardian. So for the next couple of years, it's going to be up to that leadership team or that parent team, the literacy team that Sammy talked about, whether or not you retain them. Starting in 2029, if they score below or well below in third grade, then that is when the retention becomes mandatory, unless they have one of these good cause exemptions. And the good cause exemptions are in that last column. It is only pertains to third graders after starting in the 29-30 school year. Okay, so we got a few years to get to this point, so that's important to keep. But things like below benchmark with typical progress. So if they're making good typical progress, then that can be a reason not to. If they've been going to summer school, if they're learning English and they've been here less than 3 years, here's where it says if they have an IEP or 504, depending on that status, that could be a cause to not retain them. If they show proficiency on an alternate assessment, if they have a portfolio that shows proficiency, if they've been previously retained. So if in kindergarten, first or second grade, the LEA decided and the literacy team decided to retain them, you wouldn't retain them again in third grade. You can only retain a student one time. So if you retain them in kindergarten, even if they're not on benchmark in third grade, we're not going to retain them again. And then intensive intervention for more than 2 years. So if they're have already been receiving very intensive intervention, they've had an IRP and they're still not there, they probably also have an IEP at that point, I would imagine. So that would be a good cause exemption to not retain them. And then if they're a new student within third grade without a prior IRP, so think students moving into the state of Utah in third grade that come in, we wouldn't retain those students as they haven't been in the system to get that instruction. Okay, I have 17 new messages on my thing that just came through. So before we move on to this slide, is there people. Okay. We're going to talk about the appeals process in just a minute. If a student has an IRP in first and second grade, they would be exempt from retention in third. Julie, not necessarily, but it does say if it's a good cause exemption if they've had intensive intervention. Just because you've had an IRP doesn't mean you've had what's going to meet the intensive intervention, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they are not required to be retained. They can still be retained. It would just be something that parents could apply for, like a good cause exemption, to have them opted out of retention. So, and then they would go through the appeals process.
Right.
So,
okay.
And that's coming up. We'll talk about the appeals process in just a second.
Yes. So how is the intensive intervention defined? As a good cause exemption, it was not defined in the bill. It just says intensive intervention. So I guess that will be determined through the LEA or
Yep.
So and then it looks like Julie answered the question. If a parent chooses to opt out of Acadience, then you'll have to use another assessment or a portfolio to determine that. And then we're going to talk about the appeal in just a minute. Okay, is there any other questions that I missed?
They were all answered, Courtney, either by you or by Julie.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So the appeals process. If a parent or LEA wants to appeal, so the LEA shall establish a process in order to allow a parent to appeal. And this is just the wording directly from the bill. Currently, I'm working on, and it's not done, I'm working on an sample appeals process that you can go through and you can use. And I hope to have that finished in it will be part of the handbook that we put together with Sammy's. It will be included in there. It wasn't my first to get done, since we won't really start this mandatory retention for a couple of years. So I was trying to get some other things with the bill. We were working on those first. We will get this appeal process done, and it will be in your handbook, and we'll get that sent out as soon. But there will be a process that we will give you a model, and then your LEA will be able to create that. But you do have to have a way to allow parents to appeal that process, and it goes through to look at the evidence and determine the relevance of that. So hopefully that helps with the appeal. And I think that's all.
Ellen, do you want to expand on what you just put in the chat box? Because I think it's a question by several. They're wondering, can a special education teacher work with kids without an IEP but have an IRP?
That's a great question, Julie. Okay, so I would tell you this. Think about incidental benefit. So if a a special educator came into the classroom for push-in services, we can include other students who have those same weaknesses and those sub-skills to be in a group with a special educator. It's a great use of your special educator who is very trained and ready to respond to interventions for students with reading difficulty. So yes, that would be called incidental benefit. We used to believe that if we were giving them special education funds, then it would be all allocated to the special education teacher, which is not a correct interpretation of the law. So yes, they can be in groups with those, but I would say it needs to be in a push-in model, but absolutely possible to intervene with those students as well. So the students with an IEP by law have to receive those services, and those goals are being worked on. But a student who does not have an IEP can receive incidental benefit from having that special educator or the general education teacher, whoever's delivering that specially designed instruction, intervene with them as well, because it is a sub-skill that they also need to be addressing and receiving interventions for. Does that help? It's kind of old-fashioned thinking that we can't intervene with students with disabilities if they have a goal in that area or something like that. We absolutely can. We can both be instructing and we can both be providing the specially designed instruction if it's decided by the team.
Ellen, somebody wants you to put that in writing. And
okay.
Does it have to be?
Are you serious? Because I certainly would.
Yeah, somebody asked that. Elizabeth Phillips asked that. And then Susie is asking, does it have to be less than 50% of the students are gen ed?
Well, that's a really good question. I've never thought about that. I would say, again, you've got her in your classroom, right? So this is all push in. You've got her in your classroom, and what would you describe as an effective small group of students? So again, these students are looking at, they're definitely they were in that tier 3 group where you said, yeah, I've got to get these students ready to be evaluated and or at least take to my problem solving team and get some further ideas as to what we're going to do and how we're going to proceed. But so I'm in there to help that student. If I'm helping that is the one student in the classroom with an IEP, and I could effectively, depending on the intensity of the need for that student, I could effectively put 2 other students in that group. Or I might want to say, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm quite skilled as a special educator. I could put 5 in that group and I could manage that group. You certainly would do so. So I think it's a depends answer. But would you want to put well, here's what I'd say. Could the special education teacher who's in a co-taught classroom say, we've got half of the students in this classroom that don't have this skill. By law, I have to give this student with an IEP instruction. Could she also include a bigger group to go over this skill? Absolutely, as long as she was able to be, he was able to be effective at making sure that I've given them their service time and I've created a way to get progress monitoring going, or I'm keeping some sort of record as to what's going on. Yes, she could probably, or he could probably teach a larger group of students. It depends. Does that help anybody? There's no magic about she can only see this many students and or that kind of thing. I would just say that as long as that goal that the student has can be serviced with this many people involved, sure. If that student needs more one-on-one, then of course we'd want to make sure that our job is to ensure that they're making progress toward reaching their goal. But I'm telling you, as a special educator, I would have been more than happy to jump in and do a small group in the classroom, including other students who are struggling in that same skill set. That same sub-skill is missing for that student as well.
And Piper has put some great information into the chat box regarding some codes and allowable uses. So thank you to Piper and Lindsay.
Who is even more
and Lindsay.
authoritative.
Yes, and Lindsay. So there's some more information there. I'm going to ask you guys if are you all good to go to 12:30? I know some of you probably have something else, but we still have lots of information to get through, and we've only done 241. So if you're able to, we'll push it to 12:30 to try and get through the rest of this. So on the next slide, I might just try to go through some of these quickly. We have this, all of these terms are defined in SB 241. So we created a document. If you click on the definitions link up there, it will take you to a document that has all of those definitions on it for your reference. So just like a quick jot of like what are these terms and how are they defined in code? They are all listed there straight from code. So as a quick reference for you all. And then the next one is we are, like I said earlier, we mentioned that we are updating R277406 early learning program and assessment. We are updating the reading on grade level definition the early learning plan requirements and the early math assessment requirements, which we will get to in just a second. That went to committee in April and is going to full board in May. In May, going to committee is R277326, which is about the minimum qualifications for early literacy coaches. It does say that we can define those in board rule. We don't know if the board is going to put those minimum qualifications in board rule or not. There have been talks about it, but we don't know what they're going to decide, so stay tuned on that. But already in that was how we were identifying the lowest performing schools. For our literacy coaches that we housed, we are pulling that piece out since that has been removed from code. So that will go to committee in May and next week on next Friday, and then it'll go to full board in June. Dyslexia Bill SB 81. So just a quick little overview of this one. This clarifies the diagnostic assessment. Does not constitute an official dyslexia diagnosis. Another thing in here, it allows parents to provide outside results from outside testing for dyslexia assessment to trigger the same intervention actions that were triggered prior. And this one also, I believe it was in this one that kind of protects a parent or not a parent, but a licensed professional, an educator, from recommending a dyslexia assessment. So it does allow educators to say that they feel like that their student may have dyslexia. So just be aware that is allowed. They cannot be penalized for that. HB 393, I just spoke with the U yesterday, University of Utah, so we will be working with the University of Utah to create a dyslexia screening pilot program. So watch for more information to come regarding that. We've just had a quick conversation yesterday as I was up on the U working with them with some other things that they're doing with the science of reading. And so we're going to start having meetings regarding that. So watch for that opportunity to come as well. HB 312, we talked a little bit about it with our coaching because it does have that coaching piece that goes into effect in the 28-29 school year. But also in this bill, we kind of called this the catch-all bill at the end of session, where like if something wasn't passing in another bill, it kind of got thrown into this bill, and if something wasn't passing in this bill, it kind of got thrown into this bill. What did get put into this is the repeal of the early learning plan. So prior to this, you had your early learning plan. I mean, the literacy had been pulled out for a couple of years, maybe 1 year. A couple of years, the literacy part of it was pulled out. So now there is no requirement to meet this state growth goal for math. And there is no requirement to complete the plan setting the local goals. So that is gone. So that there was also information in R277406 that we are repealing and pulling out of that board rule as well. So with that, I think my next slide is lit training is canceled. So there is no lit training this summer. Because there is no early learning plan. The one thing that we will be sending out that we still do need to collect that is in R277406 is what curriculum you are using for literacy. So we will be sending that out. It will be a very quick Qualtrics survey. It might be on another slide. It'll be a quick Qualtrics survey where we are just asking you what you're using for tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 for your interventions. And I think we're just gathering your contact information so we have you as well. And if you're not on our listserv, hopefully we have that slide. I don't remember if we put that slide in this one, but we will tell you how you can get on our listserv. And if you aren't on our listserv, when you submit your information as you are the contact person, we will add you we can add you that way as well. So additional session updates. So as was mentioned at the very beginning, the funding um, for SB 127, the 9.6 million that we were using to fund these pieces of SB 127 has been moved and shifted and distributed to RESAs and districts that are not in RESA. So your kids will receive books for Kids Read Now for this summer. Kids Read Now has guaranteed that they will be delivered to the students before June 30th. So they will receive books this summer. They will not receive books next summer. The community engagement piece, where the caregiver sessions and the LEA sessions are being supported, those will go through June. Harmony is overseeing both the Kids Read Now projects now until the end of June. So if you have questions regarding those, reach out to Harmony. Denise, do you want to talk about MGT and collective efficacy?
Sure. So for MGT, that is the change management that was mandated in SB 127. So just so you know, if you have cohorts, people involved in cohorts 3 and 4, that will be changed a little bit. Communication is going out to them next Monday. So for cohort 3, we are going to have canceled their refresher session that was in June and have their final plan due by June 1st. That gives us time to go through their plans and have a final accounting of those that have participated in cohort 3. So they were at the very end. So they will get an email next Monday, but their final plan will be due June 1st. And then we will share out the people that have met all of those requirements. And then cohort 4 is the one affected the most because they had just started. And so we are going to have their refresher session on June 16th that there will be 4 different topics available for them. And then they're going to have a quick turnaround. Their plan will be due by June 19th. We will give work time in the June 16th for them to work on their plan, but the final plan that they will turn into us will be due on June 19th. And then that gives us a week to do a final accounting of them. All of our work has to be finished by the end of June. So once again, their emails, they will be getting emails next Monday that will give all of that information. Oh, and then sorry, collective efficacy.
Yeah.
That we are doing our final session of collective efficacy, and that is June 9th and 10th, and that is now full. It will be at Granite School District, and that will be our last opportunity for people to engage in that.
Okay. SB 127 supports that we were providing through professional learning that we were doing. From the Science of Reading, from the Science to the Classroom webinars that Harmony and Denise have overseen over the last few years. Those will be ending. We will beg, borrow, and plead with our superintendency to try to get funding to continue to do those because a lot of those, but the funding that we were using was SB 127. The book studies like we have done with Patty Montgomery, we won't be able to offer those again. The letters for admin and letters that we were overseeing, we are not able to do. You did receive an email last week, I believe, from Courtney regarding some licenses that we can transfer. She is overseeing that, and there's an opportunity there, but we cannot be fiscally responsible for those. So no, just want to, yeah, canceled. Yeah, I feel like I just have this big canceled sign going across my whole screen all day long for everything. Okay, I'm going to stop right there for just a second to answer some questions, and then I'll turn it over to Amber. will we get to screens, lower grades? Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. No math. What about Acadience reading? So I did answer that question. So will this progress still be on the state report card? Yes, whatever is still on the state report card will still be on the state report card. Reading on grade level will be adjusted to include at and above benchmark because that's the new definition. Okay, Amber, go ahead.
Thank you. I get to share more changes with you. So if you didn't have enough already in this meeting, I'll share some more changes that are happening. So our EISP funding, this is the literacy software funding that has been in place for since 2016, was discontinued as of June 30th, 2026. So if you still have reimbursements for the 25-26 school year that need to be submitted, those are actually due tomorrow so that we can get all of the data from those vendors to finalize our last report that we'll be doing for the interim session. I have gotten a lot of questions about this. And I can answer a couple of them because I've been asking and getting answers for you all while we've been on this meeting and you've been asking questions. So the changes to the legislation about technology and specifically with HB 273, a lot of people have asked, does HB 273 restrict us from purchasing literacy software? The answer is no. It does require you to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? More thoughtful about technology use, but it doesn't specifically say you can't purchase technology for K-3 students. So I've gotten that question, I think probably 100 times the last couple of days since legislative session, but there is nothing in that bill that specifically says you cannot purchase technology for K-3. The other question that I've gotten a lot is what funding can we use to purchase literacy software? We are trying to be creative and find funding, but the short answer is most likely you're going to have to be just allocating funds from your WPU or other funds that you have available for those software purchases if you choose to make them. There's not specific funding anymore for literacy software. And this funding didn't get moved into the WPU. It was just terminated funding. So it didn't get moved anywhere for you to be able to pull from other sources. But those are the top two questions that I have. If you have other questions, please email me and I will get answers for you if I don't have them. But also if you need to know if your school or your LEA has submitted their reimbursement, reach out to me and I can let you know that as well. So thanks, Julie.
Sorry, we just did a quick refresh because we had a hidden slide that we're unhiding. So the HB 273, so this is what the policy team has been sharing regarding SB 273. So there's some information here. There's more detailed information about it in the legislative summary, the bill book that we shared at the beginning. And also keep in mind that it doesn't really fall to our team as overseeing this. So Amy Hunt, our assistant superintendent, Amy Hunt, is overseeing this bill, and she would be your contact information to get all the nitty-gritty and the information regarding this. So we will be creating a model policy on balanced technology use in the classroom that will include those requirements that are in the bill. LEAs must adopt a balanced instructional technology use policy, and then they have to report to USBE upon the adoption of their policy. And another thing to kind of keep in mind is it's like just minimize the non-essential screen time that a student needs and prioritize purposeful engagement with the instructional technology. And like, I think there was a piece about assessment as well in there. But Amy is your contact, and thank you, Denise, for dropping that in the chat box. So sorry I don't have like the nitty-gritty on it because it's not really falling to our team to oversee this bill. Also a lot in that bill. So just some quick reminders for coming up. Many of you have seen on the website, and I believe it went out in the LD listserv email that we are in search of a new Science of Reading expert panel, and we have an application out. You could go ahead and click on that Qualtrics survey that is in there. Applications are due by this Friday. They are the panel will be selected and approved in a board meeting. We're pushing for June with that. There are some requirements with coming to the panel that are explained in the application, and you get to do it all for free too. So it's not a paid position. So please be aware of that. But we do know that there are those in this meeting that have a deep knowledge of the science of reading, and we would love for you to be to submit an application to be considered by our board as someone for our expert reading panel. So that application is there, and we would encourage you to get it filled out by Friday. And oh, I did have a slide with the duties on it. So here they are. Provide advanced professional learning in the science of reading, develop modules for teachers and leaders, coordinate with educator prep programs on advancing the science of reading. And then in working with us at the board, we will review data, we monitor implementation of fidelity with on-site visits, and then advise LEAs on science of reading curriculum and programs. And then obviously those terms are there. There's no compensation or benefits, but you may receive per diem and travel reimbursement. So there are those things that they will be, but that you will be working on and advising our panel on. So we typically, the requirement is you have to meet quarterly, at least quarterly. So in the past, we have done one per quarter. 3 of them have been virtual for about 3 hours. And then we do one in-person one at USBE offices. And we usually do that one as a full day. Letters completion. So we are changing the process. Denise, do you want to go ahead and talk about this?
Sure. So just to update you on where we're at. So initially, to have letters added to an educator's license, we did a bulk upload and went through anyone who had done letters on the USBE license and sent that through to match with Cactus. So in that bulk upload, we got about 7,000 matches, but we had 3,000 people that didn't match. Let's say in Cactus, their name is Kimberly, but on their letters, it was Kim. So that didn't match, or if they got married, or if they changed LEAs from when they took letters until we did the match. So then after that, I had a form that if there was somebody that didn't have it on their license and wanted it on, could complete trying to get the book. And with that, we caught about 3,000 people, but we know that there's still people that have been missed or who are currently finishing letters. So now we're aligning with the regular process of what someone would do for an endorsement. So correct, this is not an endorsement. This is just showing that they completed, and it's the full teacher's letters, volume 1 and volume 2. It is not letters for early childhood, and it is not letters for admin. So with the full letters, we're aligning with the endorsement process, but it's not an endorsement. So they will now, if they want to have that show that completion on their license, they will go through SM Apply and fill out an application, and they do have to upload their letters completion certificate, which they will find in their letters profile. So they will find that, upload that, and then letters will show on their license as completing letters. So it shows up in USIMS because we are not in Midas. It's attached to their license, and it shows up like an endorsement, but it is not an endorsement. So it just says letters completion, I believe, on there in USIMS. So just wanted to share that process. And there's the link, and I will put it in the chat as well. if you have anybody who needs to do that.
This is just
Courtney?
just a quick plug for Jake down in Iron County this summer. He'll be down there June 2nd through the 4th. Originally, we had said you needed to come as a team, grade level team. I've talked with Jake. There was a lot of districts reaching out, like just because of the travel arrangements, it was hard to send an entire team. So now that teams have been established, we probably have about 20-ish to 25 seats still open. And Jake is fine if it's just one off. So just a coach, just an administrator, just a teacher. And it is designed for 3rd through 5th or 6th grade. But if you have a 2nd grade or a 1st grade teacher that's super interested in the comprehension and fluency, he also talks a lot about vocabulary. There's a lot of great things that they could easily adapt into their classroom. And so feel free to fill that out. So far, I have sent out emails letting people know that they've been that they're in. We haven't got it into Midas yet. But if you've registered, you should be accepted and ready to go. If you haven't got that, feel free to reach out to me and I'll look and see why that didn't get to you. But otherwise, feel free to fill that out and I will send you a confirmation email that you're in and ready to go.
Thank you. And then the next thing we have is our LD dates for the 26-27 school year. So mark your calendars now and plan for travel to join us on September 9th. We are going to do in person. So that beginning of the year, we want to all meet together and be together in the same room. We won't do a hybrid option. It will just be in person. We will record it the best that we can in Basement West, but we will try to get it recorded and to share out after. But we would love to have you all there with us in person. And then we will do November, January, and then we shifted. We were going to do March again, but based off of this past year, we're going to shift that to April again. So it will be April and we will do those 3 virtually. And yes, Melinda, thank you for the plug for Jake. If you haven't participated, it has been amazing. And the feedback that we have received has been incredible. He's done an amazing job. If I could spend money, if I had money to spend next year, it would definitely be something similar to what he has done because he's done such a great job. And also given such a great support to those upper grade teachers that feel like they don't get that support a lot of the times. So, yes, so it's been amazing. But yes, LD meetings for next year, those are the dates. Mark your calendars, get them on. And, oh, there is the listserv. Maybe Harmony threw that in there for me. So if you are not on our listserv and you would like to join, we would love to have you. If you know of other people that are in your LEA that should be included in the listserv to be able to join our meetings and get our emails, they go out every Tuesday. And please sign up and join there. And so we will have that available. And we would love to have you get contact. We will stop the recording for just a few minutes and take some Q&A answers. Stop recording.